Shalom to all of you. How you doing?
Good.
Oh, all right. We have a small group. Perfect. Love it. So, first of all, thank you for setting up the meeting. I will be coming more to Prescott in the future, so I look forward to hanging out with you guys a little bit more. Tonight, I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to teach about my favorite topic. We'll talk about the temple, and what we're going to do is try to share with you some verses from the New Testament and connect it with the temple app that we have behind me. The temple app, let me give you an idea what the temple app is. The temple app that you see is a first century temple, Herodian temple. Okay, it's Herod didn't build it. It's just that he was a king who facilitated the money to get it. But everything is based on measurements as accurate as we can find it. My teacher, Joseph Good, has been doing research on the temple 42 years. So I've been his student now for 11, and I've been studying the temple 22 years. And what I like doing is taking the verses in the New Testament that tells you what the temple is, but sometimes people don't make the connections between the location of a verse. So when you read it, you really don't see what's behind it, or like, for example, when Paul got arrested in Acts 21, why did he get arrested? Where was he? Where is the general area he's standing when he got arrested? Why did he get arrested? You know, those things we need to study. So what we're going to do is get your Bibles ready, because we're going to go into a lot of verses. Okay? And maybe some of you can help me read. Is that good? So let's open with a word of prayer. And I pray that this is a blessing for you. Amen. Don't believe anything I say. Validate everything I say. You know, that's the one thing I tell people all the time. You know, you don't have to believe what I say. Go back and look it up. But the question is, if I'm right, based on the evidence, then you have a decision to make. Because the temple is the most misunderstood topic in the Bible. Mind you, out of 613 commandments, 279 of them are connected to the temple. But yet, we don't study the temple. This is the reason why we have arguments every year amongst the brethren about the calendar, about the feast, about what to eat, what not to eat. They argue about commandments and how to keep them. They don't understand the structure. Okay? So tonight we're going to do our best to share some information about certain events in the New Testament and how they can relate to your understanding using the temple. Is that good? All right, Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, thank you for the opportunity to be here in Prescott and share and teach. The brothers and sisters that are here, thank you for allowing them to come. And all of you that are watching over the internet, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And I thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to serve you and to teach about your commandments and your holy house. In the name of Yeshua, amen. Let's go to, the first thing I want to talk about is the concept of repentance, teshuvah. Now, as we know the definition of repentance, they tell us is to turn around, correct? Turn around from what? From your lifestyle, from the direction you're going and going back to the ancient path. Well, did you know that the ancient path is actually an idiom for the way you get to Jerusalem during the holidays, the feast? So we understand what turning our back to God is spiritually, correct? But can you show it using the text with the geography to get a complete understanding of what repentance really is? So as you see, right now we're looking, let me give you a little geography. We're looking at the temple from the east. You are looking from east to west. Remember that in the ancient world, I have a master's in biblical theology and ancient Near Eastern history, and what I learned was that when you do not understand the topography and the geography, you're not really going to see the picture that the Bible is trying to convey. That's something my teacher taught me. It's like, you know what this means? And then he showed me the temple, and I go, now it makes sense. So, you know, when you read it in the book of Jeremiah, where it says, "O backslid Israel," right? Yeah. Then you got to go back to the garden. In the garden, Adam sinned, transgressed the commandment, and he is exiled. Which direction? East. When Cain committed murder, which one did God exile him? East. When the northern kingdom disobeyed the Torah, which way they went? When the southern kingdom of Israel, they disobeyed the Torah, which way did they go? Eastward.
Interesting.
Oh, because east in the ancient world, that's where the sunrise comes from, like today. Okay? But everything was connected with the underworld and sun god worship. So the temple, you never look east to worship God. Because if I'm looking east, I'm using the apps to get an idea. Panim hapanim is when you obey the Lord, face to face. So if I'm looking towards the temple, I'm looking west, then I'm face to face with God. But when I break the Torah, I turn my back to Him. All backs in Israel, and now I'm going to the east, where there's exile, where there's shame, where there's chaos, where there's death. That's why Abraham came from the east to the west. Jacob came from the east, northeast, to the west. Israel, when they came out of Egypt, they went from the east to the west. They are coming, Messiah, when He returns, He's coming from the east, same thing. Okay? The Mount of Olives, literally I'm standing on it in the app right there. That's what the Mount of Olives is. So that's the Mount of Olives where Messiah ascended. I believe He was crucified there, buried there, and He ascended from there. He will return on that mountain, according to the prophecies. Right? Now, as we understand what repentance is, it requires an action. You're going to look to the sun. I'm going to look to the sun on the east. And when I recognize that the sun is not the answer for my problems, I turn around. I turn around to redirect my attention back to the God of the creation, to embrace the covenant. The temple teaches you what holiness is. So, let's go to Ezekiel chapter 43, verse 10 through 12. Okay? Ezekiel chapter 43, we're going to read a lot of verses. And this is not a specific teaching that I have. I'm basically doing this for you guys so you can use the app and start tracing our steps in the biblical narrative with it, okay? In chapter 43 in the book of Ezekiel, verse 6 through 12. Then I heard Him speaking to me from the temple while the men stood beside me, and He said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne. You gotta stop there and ask yourselves, if the temple is the place of God's throne, then how come we don't study it? How come we don't respect it? That's something that's significant. By the way, there is a commandment in the book of Leviticus, in two places in Leviticus, that tells us to revere the sanctuary and the Sabbath. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It says, Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place where the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of children of Israel forever. Forever. Okay? Although the temple's not there today, Jerusalem and the Temple Mount is still God's throne. Because He set it aside for Him. The fact that the Muslims are there, they're profaning God's holiness. And they'll pay for that. But it saddens me when many people now want to move the temple to the city of David. When somebody moves the temple to the city of David, with all due respect to the audience, they're not studying archaeology or topography. All you need to do is have one picture from topography. You know it is impossible for the measurements of the temple to fit there.
Amen.
Impossible.
Amen.
Impossible. And by the way, the measurements of the temple are in the book of Ezekiel chapter 40. Chapter 41. It tells you what it is. But when people want to change certain things without the proper research, they come up with certain weird ideas. Alright, it says, No more shall the house of Israel defile my holy name. They are not, nor their kings, by their harlotry over their carcasses of their kings in their high places. When they said, their threshold by my threshold, and their doorpost by my doorpost. Well, they wall between them and me. They defy my holy name and the abominations which they committed. Therefore, I have consumed them in my anger. Verse 9. Now let them put their harlotry and their carcasses of their kings far away from me, and I will dwell in their midst forever. Verse 10. Can somebody read verse 10, please?
O son of man, show the house to the house of Israel.
Stop there for 1 minute. I'm going to stop you along the way. I hope you don't mind. It says, son of man, show the house to the house of Israel. Now, in some verses it says temple. But in Hebrew, the word is habaita. Beit Hamikdash, the house of the presence. So here it's using a very interesting idiom. The house. Because that's the name of the temple, the house. That's where he dwells. Very interesting. Because on the day of Pentecost, they were in a house together. They were not in a regular. I mean, if you go to Israel, you understand first century architecture, you'll know right away 3,000 people cannot fit in one of those houses in Jerusalem. Impossible. Okay? All right. Go ahead and read it, brother.
That they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern.
Okay, so the Hebrew word for pattern is tavnit. The Hebrew word for tavnit is a blueprint. Now, I've had the privilege to do this teaching in front of architects. Okay, and I've asked them, can you, if you're the architect, can someone else change the blueprint that you designed? And they're going to know it's a crime. Because they studied, they are certified, they put their name and their seal to validate and make sure that if something happens to the building, they're in trouble. Because they designed it. So now the foreman in the construction who's reading the plans can say, hey, there's a problem with this plan based on whatever you're doing, and then he may call the architect and say, yo, you may have a problem with structure. Okay, so it's a crime. You cannot just change the blueprint, because then something happens to the building, what happens? Who's responsible for the lives that are lost? So this is God's blueprint. Blueprint. I have some of that sauce there. The hot sauce, you have the green one.
It's easy for us to say.
Man, it's like blueprint. I already have an accent, and now you give me some hot sauce. It's, like, it's really not. Keep going, brother. Verse 11.
And if they, now on verse 11, and if they be ashamed of all that they have done, show them the form of the house, and the fashion thereof, and the goings out thereof, and the comings in thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the ordinances thereof.
That means laws. 279 of them that we are commanded by God in the book of Ezekiel to learn, but yet we don't spend any time in them. But we're following Torah? I mean, if you don't study the temple, but why read Leviticus? How can we understand Leviticus, half of Numbers, 16 chapters in the book of Exodus, if we never studied it? That's why every argument we have in the body is about things that are related to the temple. I paid attention. It does. And I'm no longer arguing. I'm just going, I do want the answer, study the temple. And it simplifies things because it's a hub of authorities. Keep on, please.
And all the ordinances thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the laws thereof, and write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form thereof, and all the ordinances thereof, and do them.
Let me read number 12. This is the law of the temple. The whole area surrounding the mountaintop. Look at the screen. Surrounding the mountaintop is what?
Holy.
Holy. But in the Hebrew, it uses the word kadosh kodashim. That's exactly the same word for holy of holies. So God is saying the whole mountaintop is in the text. It is most holy to Him. Not only just the Holy of Holies, but the mountaintop is set aside for His service. Okay? And it says, this is the law of the temple. Now, many people say, well, Rico, there's no temple today. Okay, fine. Why does that have to keep us from learning about the temple? I mean, we study history. We live in Civil War times. We may go into them. And when we go into Civil War, we're going to learn the history. What separated us. History being repeated over again. Okay? So the book of Ezekiel clearly tells us, and they tell us, don't get offended with me, okay? But when we talk about the temple, we have to mention these things. People will say, well, 1 Corinthians says, we are the temple. Well, is it talking to the individual or is it talking to the congregation? 1 Corinthians 1 verse 1 tells you that he's speaking to the whole ecclesia, to the whole group of people. So we are a temple. So let me ask you guys a question. Can you put in a pig on the altar in the temple of God? Why not? It will defile God's holiness, correct? Aren't you called a holy kingdom? So how is it that a pig cannot be put on the altar in the temple of God, but yet people that are saying they're the temple, they're eating pork? Does that make any sense? We're supposed to be imitating what the God told us to imitate. So if we study the temple, we know that whatever God requires in his house, he requires of his children. It's logical. Until we learn the Bible, then we want to tell God what we want to keep, how we want to do that, when to show up to his holy feasts. No, my calendar, my calculations are, so I'm going to take Sukkot when I feel the calendar is correct. But then, let me challenge you with this. Go to the next page in chapter 44, verse 23 and 24. It says, and they shall teach my people, these are the priests. This is a commandment in the Torah. In last week's Torah portion, you saw that. Chapter 8 of Numbers all the way to chapter 12. It was quite clear who has the authority to render the things that are holy. And just wait until you get to chapter 18. If you need verification, wait until 18. And then tell me that they don't have any authority at all. Okay? Because God doesn't change. Okay, so it says, verse 23 and 24, they shall teach my people the difference between holy and unholy, and cause them to discern between clean and unclean. Can I ask you an honest question? And I'm not trying to shame anybody. I'm just trying to get to know, the audience. How many of us in the internet, in the Zoom, and here in the class, how many of us have really done a study on holy and profane, clean and unclean? Only one person, right? Now, that's not that is mean to you. It's just that we were not taught to study. That's all. But when we read the book of Acts, chapter 10, and the story of Cornelius, he's using temple language. Don't call any man common and unclean. And then Mark chapter 7, Yeshua is calling out the Pharisees of the house of Shammai because they are abusing the commandment and not helping their parents. And he says, you do set aside this thing for korban. Well, wait a minute, that's a temple language. How come we don't know what korban is? You know what I mean? And then we have the whole letter of Hebrews. Oh my God, the whole letter of Hebrews is about what? The high priesthood. Do you know that there's a difference between the Levites and the high priesthood? The Levites are the tribe. The high priestly line comes from one man of the whole Levitical clan. Okay? So therefore, there are areas that I highly recommend you consider studying. Because Matthew 23, Yeshua is challenging the leadership in what is called ritual purity versus moral purity. 1 Corinthians, all the way, 1 Corinthians. I did a study, in-depth cultural background study on this in Spanish. And we found a lot of crazy stuff. Looking into the cultural background, we found that Paul is trying to convey to the Corinthians, who live in a very morally corrupt community, to live moral lives according to the Torah. And he's using temple language to show them how to do it. The book of Revelation is about the feast and enthronement ceremony in chapter 4. Chapter 8 is Yom Kippur. Bitter waters in chapter 10. In chapter 8, verse 10, I'm sorry. There's so much evidence, but we never consider. Did you know that Genesis 1 through 3 is a temple text? The scholars tell you that Genesis 1 through 3 is a temple text. The whole earth is supposed to be his temple. But because of humanity, now he set it in the garden. And we cannot return to the garden until death is defeated. Have you ever wondered why, after the book of Revelation, there's no mention, after the millennial reign, there's no mention of a temple on the earth? Have you noticed that? Have you ever wondered why? Because death is defeated. And as long as death is alive, as long as death reigns on the earth, God's temple, because he cannot dwell where there's death.
Yeah.
So when the earth is sanctified for God, then he will bring down the New Jerusalem. And he will be dwelling among us. That means that the whole earth will become his temple again. It's holy ground, sacred space. With that being said, when we look at this particular model, I'm giving you enough now to just think about it. You're looking at the city of Jerusalem on the map. Now, did you know that only in the city of Jerusalem, when the temple was standing, you can eat the Passover lamb? Only in the city of Jerusalem. You cannot kill the lamb outside the city walls.
Yes.
It had to be inside. Where we go, okay? Where can you prove that? Let's go there. Deuteronomy chapter 16. So far, so good?
So far, so good.
Okay, no stones yet, right?
Tomatoes, no stones.
Tomatoes, okay, good. Deuteronomy 16 tells us, verse 5, you may not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates, which the Lord your God gives you, but at the place where the Lord your God chooses to make his name abide. There you shall sacrifice the Passover at twilight, on the going down of the sun, at the time you came out of Egypt. Okay? So why are people now killing their own lambs and putting the blood on the doorposts outside of Jerusalem? We're not supposed to do that. Well, Rico, we want to do it like the way they did in Egypt. Well, wait a minute. There's a command that says not to do that once the temple was established. Once the temple was established on the Temple Mount, that's final resting place of his throne. No other place, only in the holy city, because the meal is holy, kadosh. Now, again, I'm not saying you cannot eat lamb today on a Passover Seder. What I'm saying is you cannot call that lamb a Passover sacrifice.
Right.
You understand the difference?
Yes.
Now, if you slaughter it yourself, do not manipulate the blood. The Bible clearly tells us that if you're hungry, you can't get to Jerusalem, and you need meat to eat, you slaughter the animal, you pour out the blood, and you cover it. Have you ever wondered why? Because manipulating on the blood and putting on the doorpost belongs to the priest, according to Numbers chapter 18, verse 1 through 3. They are in charge of anything related to the altar. Thus, manipulating on the blood belongs to them only. If you're hungry, you slaughter it, pour the blood, don't manipulate it. That means don't be doing some ritual things outside of Jerusalem, because it will be called encroaching on the holy. That's a death penalty according to the Torah. Did you know that? It happened to Korah. That's next week's Torah portion. Right? Korah died. And then there was a king Uzziah who wanted to do a incense offering in the temple. He entered the holy place, and the priest kicked him out. Because he says, it's not for you to do this. It doesn't belong to you. That's not your authority. And because of that, God gave him leprosy. So we better learn what belongs and what doesn't belong in our lifestyle. Because there are holy legal things. This is the law of the temple. You don't argue with biblical law because God established it. He's the ultimate judge. When he renders judgment, we do. We don't ask, we don't change. And this is very significant. And many people get upset with me when I use that language. Well, have you studied biblical law? I've been studying that for the last 6 years. It's amazing what you learn. You learn like, oh my Lord, I should have been dead 15 years ago. It made me realize how grateful I am to be serving the Lord, who in my ignorance, instead of slashing me and cutting me off, he gave me an opportunity to learn a little bit more so I could respect him. I just didn't know. I was only going by my instinct. I read it, and I was so desperate trying to please the Creator that I was doing things according to my own imagination, and I did not know. I confused my own way with my desire to please Him. Because we came from a system of religion that they don't tell you a lot of information, do they? And now you come into the Torah and you want to do it all. But there are laws for the land, there are laws for civil rights, there are laws for judicial matters, there are laws for governmental things, there are laws for the temple, there are laws for real estate. It's a kingdom. As a matter of fact, the Torah is not even a religious book. It has theological content. But the Torah is a constitution of a nation. It's a treaty. When I began to look at it in this perspective, my whole life changed. Because I know, now I know He's the sovereign, I am the servant. I don't tell Him what to do. I just obey what He wants. Everything changed. Okay, so let's go back to Ezekiel 44. In Ezekiel 44, And I'm going slow because I want to read you verses. I want to give you some information that I think you need to hear, okay? And again, I'm going to make the statement again. If I'm wrong in something, I will fix it. and I'll change and I'll make it better. But please, don't argue with stuff you don't study. It's not fair.
Yeah.
Consider looking into the information first. Validate it, and if I'm wrong, I'll change it. So it's not a debate. Well, now we exchange it.
Amen.
Okay, which changes the whole thing.
So would you be profaning the holy by doing the Passover, you know, in the wrong way? So because that's a representation.
Because it's holy.
Yeah. So it should be in the Holy of Holies, and it should be in the
Should be in the city of Jerusalem, and because there's no temple, we really can't keep certain elements of it. But we have the memorial.
Right.
We still observe that memorial. That's why we have the Seder.
Yeah.
That's the Haggadah. That's the telling of the story. Each step. You know who established the Seder for Passover? It was actually the men of the Great Assembly. 120 men, 96 of them were prophets when they came back from battle. They all said, we need to make sure that we remember what happened. So that they got all together and they say, let's do the head. They always did it because they were doing it, they were telling the story of Exodus. But when the temple was established, there are certain rules and amendments that happened from Exodus to Deuteronomy for the second generation. There are certain things that were commanded to do in Egypt that when they went into the land, there was an amendment to that command. Not changed it, it's just the geographical location was different. And by the time they went into the land of Israel, now they have the priestly the caste to do, not the caste, but the priestly clan to do the duties of every Israelite who did in Egypt. You follow? Just different geographical location. So with that being said, let me ask you this. When you study the book of Exodus, do you study Egyptology? Because everything happened in Egypt. When you study the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and do you study Mesopotamian history? Or the Ugaritic, or the modern day Syria, Lebanon is? Because that's where Jacob lived for 20 years.
Yeah.
When you study the book of Esther, do you study the kingdom of Persia? Because that's what she was the queen of. When you read Daniel, Haggai, Nehemiah, Ezra, do you read Babylonian captivity? Because that's where they were. Oh, wait a minute. When we read about the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the Essenes and the Iscariots, the Sicarii and the groups in the first century, do we study the Hasmonean family and the Hellenization influence? Because that's what led to the change in the first century. See, by the way, when you study the letters of Paul, do we study imperial cult, honor and shame, reciprocity, patron-clan relationship? How about the religion of Rome and all their gods and how they worship them? See, we just read things at random. Why is Paul using temple language to teach the Gentiles? Because that's what holiness was to them. So he wants to bring them to the level of holiness of Israel. So anyone in Israel will learn the book of Leviticus. That's what holiness is. So if we want to learn to get close to God, we have a blueprint. He tells you exactly how to walk up, what to do, what to say, how to pray, what to bring if you do something. There's a blueprint for us to understand. It's like, what happened to men when we buy something in the house? Let's say I need to build something. Let's say I want to build that, right? Put it together. It's already built. You just put it together. They put all the pieces separate when you bring it in the box, right? Normally, we don't read the instructions. We're just trying to figure it out.
The picture.
Look at the picture. And then we have a tough time trying to put everything together. It's happened to me before. I'm going like, no, I can do it. And then I can never figure the little bitty thing out. And then comes my son and says, read the instructions. And he follows each step of the instruction. Boom, he gets it. Right? Do you know that's exactly what we do when we study the Bible? We want to figure it out on our own. And this is the statement that people make, that I pray to the Creator people will reevaluate. Oh, I don't need a teacher. I just need the Holy Spirit. That is illogical. From the moment you were born, someone's been teaching you something.
That's right.
You go to kindergarten, then you go to first grade, then you go to second grade, then you go to college. Then when you get out of college, half the time you get a degree on something you've never done before. So now you need experience on when you study. Then you got to get a teacher to tell you how to do your job. It's illogical. How can the Spirit of God teach you something you've never seen? He's there to remind you.
So we need the extra words.
Right? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm challenging you because when we talk about the temple, this is what I get. No, the Bible says, I am the temple. Okay, so explain holiness to me according to the biblical definition. Because in Ezekiel chapter 44, verse 24 says this, in controversy they shall stand, the priests, as judges, and judge according to my judgments. They shall keep my laws, my statutes, and all my appointed times in my Sabbath.
Amen.
So when the temple, and hallow my Sabbath. So when the temple was standing, who were the Torah teachers? Who were the judges? Who determined the feast days? The priests. You know why? Because it involved the altar. Each time you had a feast, Passover, actually Sabbath is a feast, Passover, Sabbath, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruit, which is Pentecost. Then you have Yom Teruah, then you have Yom Kippur, then you have Sukkot. Every single one of those observances requires sacrifices. So they're the ones who proclaim, decree the new moon. Because during the new moon celebration, you require sacrifices. On the Sabbath, sacrifices. Now, today we don't have that. I understand that. But I'm trying to convey to you that today we're completely out of whack. We have people sighting the moon somewhere outside Jerusalem, and they're doing their own feast according to their own understanding, transgressing the very command that says you don't do it unless it's done the proper way. I mean, how come you don't change the 4th of July? Did you change the 4th of July? Memorial Day today. Do you see people doing it yesterday or next week? I mean, do you see Americans changing the Memorial Day next week?
No.
Then how come we change God's feasts? Who are holy. They are His feasts. We don't have the legal jurisdiction to do that. Find one verse that says Gentiles can change God's holy feasts. I mean, find one verse where it says that people grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel have the right to change God's feasts. You're not going to find it. So we are in trouble. Because we keep messing with the holy things. And this is not a popular message. I'm always the back. But I work for the Lord, so it's good.
But all the teachers that are out there are always saying that nobody knows, exactly.
We do know, but we don't want. We don't. If I tell you where the guides are, they don't want them because they're Jewish. So we were anti-Semitic before we came to the Hebrew roots, and we're still anti-Semitic with a different hat. I hate to use that expression like that, but if I mention Mishnah Talmud, if I mention Mishnah Torah, and if I mention anything Jewish, all of a sudden now he's a Pharisee now. It's crazy.
It is.
I got people that don't invite me because I wear a hat when I teach. It's crazy. That's how far it's gone. But it's part of your learning process. I understand that. We are learning. We're in different places. And when we met, remember when we met, we started focusing about things we agree on. We had a great time. Man, it's a great meeting him. For that 1 hour, I felt encouraged. I was like, man, fuck. We can talk. Whatever differences, it doesn't matter. We're not focusing on it.
That's right.
Because maybe I don't have all the information he has on a topic or vice versa.
Amen.
So why don't we just exchange?
Yes.
Instead of arguing about everything, we exchange all the information and then we let God be God. Yah is Yah,
Amen.
It's all about Him anyway, right? So therefore, that's why Yeshua did it. Father, I come to reveal your name. I've done it. I want them to know that you are the only one true Elohim. But we're so busy trying to be right that we get in each other's ways and we're not growing anymore. So we need to repent. We need to go back to the basics. All right, so with that being said, I want to give you some little highlights. And first, let's go to the book of Leviticus, chapter 26, verse 2. Why am I so much focused on the temple? And why is the Sabbath table connected? In the Judaism, the Sabbath, the Jews connect the Sabbath table with the temple. Did you know that? Every ritual that is done on Shabbat, Kabbalah, Shabbat, the reception, sort of means Kabbalah. I'm not teaching Kabbalah. Kabbalah, Shabbat means the receiving of the Shabbat. It means to receive. Okay? So therefore, do you know that everything in that table and all the prayers are based on the temple ritual? Based on these two verses that I'm going to read to you today. Can you read verse 26:2, please?
26:26.
26:2.
26:2. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary.
Now go to chapter 19, verse 30, please.
Chapter 19, verse 30.
Chapter 19, verse 30.
You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am Yahweh.
Now, he, the Creator, told us, you shall keep my Sabbath and revere my sanctuary. And that's when the temple was destroyed, the rabbis and not the rabbis, because they were not at that time, but the Pharisees, whatever you want to call it, the priests and everyone, they said, we need to preserve, based on those two verses, the temple rituals within the Sabbath table. That's why you have salt on the table. That's why you have wine and you have bread. Two breads represent manna, double portion. That's why the only time, and we read it in the previous week's Torah portion about the Aaronic blessing. The Aaronic blessing are only supposed to be chanted by the Kohanim, by the priests, the sons of Aaron. That's a commandment. Okay? But on the Sabbath, on the Friday night, they allow the leader of the house to pray over their children as a blessing from Genesis 48, when Jacob, 46 or 48, I can't remember, when Jacob is adopting Ephraim and Manasseh. May the Lord bless you like Ephraim and Manasseh. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Now, you're allowed to do the Aaronic blessing on the Friday night because they understand that every leader at that moment on the Friday night becomes a priest of their home. You see what I mean? Based on these two verses I just showed you. So they're not doing it at random. That's the one thing I needed to really learn. They're not doing anything at random because they understood they cannot change the law. Whoever tells you that the rabbis are changing the laws, they don't know rabbinical understanding. And rabbis, in the majority of them, they go by the opinions of other rabbis sometimes. They argue about that. But they cannot change the Torah. But they use a Torah command sometimes to establish something. I don't necessarily agree with that. But they're using the Bible to establish something. And then they argue about the rabbi's opinion. So they get into a meeting in Midrashim, a true Midrash. It's like, okay, so we read a verse of the Bible, we read the ruling from the Sanhedrin, and now everyone is arguing about, well, Rabbi such and such said, Rabbi such and such said, Rabbi such and such said, Rabbi said, Rabbi said, Rabbi said. At the end of the meeting, they go like, well, we'll see you later, God bless you, boom. No one's arguing. Because they are arguing about the opinions, not about the law. They know they cannot change the law. That's what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. They interpret the law. They're not supposed to change or make new ones. We are doing the opposite. We are creating new laws. Changing God's laws or our interpretation without using the essence where they come from. For example, the Kiddush. I'm getting off subject. So let's go to Acts chapter 3, verse 1. Chapter 3, verse 1. No questions so far? We doing good, okay?
Okay.
All right. Go ahead and read. Be my reader. Let me get some more water here because I'm getting all hot.
Let me go ahead and read.
Yeah, please.
You said 3:1?
Yes.
Alright. Peter and John were going up into the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour.
Okay, so now you got a lot of information. Why is Peter and John going into the temple a whole bunch of years after Yeshua died and resurrected? Why is he going to the temple? Yeshua already resurrected. I thought that he did away with the law and the whole temple.
No.
But now we have a verse that tells us they went up to pray at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Wait. What was going on in the temple at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? There were sacrifices. How can you validate it? Let's go to Numbers chapter 28. The book of Numbers chapter 28. It reads like this. Verse 1 through 10, through 9, through 8, I'm sorry. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Yod-Heh-Vah spoke to Moses, saying, now did I tell you that it was Yod-Heh-Vah speaking? Now that's very important. I'm not trying to be sarcastic in any way. We forget when God speaks, we listen. So now, the story in Acts chapter 3 is that John and Peter went up to the temple at the 9th hour. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So let's find out biblically what was going on when they were praying the Amidah at the time when they went up. Okay, it says, command the children of Israel and say to them, my offering, my food, for my offerings made by fire, as a sweet aroma to me. You shall be careful to offer to me at their appointed times. You see, they're moed. God says, my sacrifices in the morning and the afternoon are done at this hour and that hour. Well, now we have a little bit of a problem for Passover. Because on the day of Passover, on the 14th, before they ate it on the 15th, so they have a problem. One year, they had over 2 million people in Jerusalem. How are you going to deal with so many lambs with a 2-hour time period to slaughter them? So the whole judicial body, for that particular day, decided, hey guys, let's move up the 3 o'clock a little higher up on a Friday. If Passover was going to fall on a Friday night, on the Sabbath, like it happened this year, then let's move up the slaughtering of the afternoon
Friday.
at 1:30 instead of 3. So we have plenty of time to get everybody for their lambs for the evening. But they didn't change the commandments, just they're trying to accommodate. As long as they do it before the sundown on the 14th, you're good. The slaughtering of the lamb. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me go here. Now it says, what verse was that?
3.
Okay. And you shall say to them, this is the offering made by fire, which you shall already read that, right? No. Where you shall made 2 lambs in the first year without blemish, day by day as a regular burnt offering. That's not for sin, it's just a free will. And then it says, and that's for the whole community. That's a representative of all of Israel in the morning and the evening. Okay, verse 4. The one lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer in the evening. It's quite interesting because now they're commanded. So when John and Peter went up, they were going at the time when they were putting a lamb on the altar, and they were doing sacrifices, and they were sprinkling the blood on the altar. That's a free will offering. So I don't understand. I thought Yeshua did away with all that stuff. Isn't that a little bit like contradicting to the way we were taught? Because we don't study the sacrificial system. So we assume that that's for sin transgression. That's a free will. That's just a free will offering. That's a thanksgiving. It's like saying, thank you, Lord, for keeping us in your kingdom. Now, they will go up on the Sabbath, right? On the Sabbath day, it's the same thing. Verse 9 and 10. And on the Sabbath day, 2 lambs in the first year. So they do the morning and the afternoon, even on the Sabbath, but then they added a lamb between 11:30 and 1:30. It's called the Musaf, around noon. Now, why do I mention this? Because Peter was praying around noon in Jaffa when the vision came to him. So he was praying the Musaf prayer that the Jews do sometimes, extra prayer that they do. Okay? All right. So let's talk about the new moon celebration. That's a big controversy within the Hebrew roots. I'm not saying that you should not congregate or maybe remember it and practice it inside the new moon so you can practice. But we don't have the legal authority to determine the feast because I already read you in Ezekiel 44, verse 24, that belongs in the realm of holiness of the priest to do. They're the ones who set the set times. But check this out. So on the new moon celebration, it included sacrifices. Can you read verse 11, please?
Of 28?
Yes. Real loud so they can hear you.
Yeah. In the beginnings of your months, you shall offer a burnt offering to Yahweh, 2 young bulls and 1 ram, 7 male lambs, a year old without defect.
That's a lot of offerings. 10 animals, right? So if you sight a new moon, that's what they would do on the day they sight the new moon for Nisan. Right? So the moment they saw the witness saw it, they interview them, they have the Aviv ready. The Aviv has to do with the agricultural cycle. So God is wise. He connected not only the sighting of the moon, but also the sighting of the moon, but also the Aviv. Well, guess what? The only people who can declare the Aviv, You can say, hey, it's Aviv, but it's not legal until the priest says it's Aviv. That's the way it worked. So then you have the sighting, the Aviv, and then once they declare it, the priest declare it holy, a flag was brought down from the top of the altar, in the corner of the altar, and then they start doing the sacrifices. See, so it includes the altar. That's why certain things you cannot do. Well, you can still cite it if you want to, but I believe that you cannot declare your own calendar based on your own sighting here in the United States in Prescott. Because it has to be from Jerusalem in the temple period because it requires sacrifices. And the only people who have the authority to have anything to do with the altar were the priests. Let's go to Numbers chapter 18. Can you read verse 1 through 3, please?
Yahweh said to Aaron, you and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear the iniquity of the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity of your priesthood.
Did you realize what that represents there? They bear the guilt. So if they do something that leads people astray, they're guilty, not you. Example from today, from 21st century. Are you guilty that the Supreme Court of the United States rendered legal for same-sex marriage?
Yeah.
Are we guilty?
Yeah.
Not really.
What do you mean?
If I marry somebody who's same-sex marriage, I'm guilty because I know better. But I cannot argue with the Supreme Court. But I will suffer the consequences of their transgression. But I'm not guilty. You see what I mean? But if I, as a pastor, if I go and I compromise just because it's a law in the United States that goes against my values, because I'm not in Israel. See, I can disagree with the laws of the United States that goes against my values. But the Bible values is God's values. It's not the Supreme Court's or a secular government. Are you with me? So therefore now, if I marry homosexuals, then I'm in complete transgression of the Torah. Because my values are supposed to be his. Because I represent him. You follow? That makes sense? So in the Bible it's the same way. So the leadership, and it happened because of the story of Korah. Chapter 16 and 17. If you go to the last verses of chapter 17, I'm sorry. Let's go from
Leviticus?
No, Numbers.
Numbers.
I'm going to read chapter 17 to put it in context. Okay? And the Lord spoke to Moses saying, Number 17, speak to the children of Israel and get them a rod for each father's house, and all their leaders according to their father's house, 12 rods. You know the story, right? So Korah and the children of Israel challenge Aaron and his sons, and remember that it was God who put them there. They are challenging God's authority. So God says, okay, let's take care of this. Each one of you is going to get a rod with your name on it. I'm going to put it in the holy place. Next day, I'm going to determine who's going to be my authority here. Who did I choose? So the story tells us that it was the sons of Aaron. In verse 5, and it shall be that the rod of the men whom I choose will blossom. Now pay attention to that verse. Because whoever's rods blossoms, that's the one that the Creator chose to do that job. That means that if you start doing things that belong in the realm of the ones that God chose, you are no longer fighting with the people, you're fighting with God Himself. That is called ma'al in the Bible.
Yeah.
Ma'al is a transgression, is treachery against God.
Wow.
And this is serious. And because I understand this, if you don't like me, that's cool, but I have to tell you. I have to tell you because I am my brother's keeper.
Yeah.
Okay? So what? He says, and it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmured against you. So now the Lord says, if they talk against you, they're talking against me. They're murmuring against me. Now the Lord's going to stand up for the sons of Aaron. Now, by the way, remember that responsibility comes with a lot of, that job comes with a lot of responsibility. When people say, oh, I'm a priest in the Order of Melchizedek. Okay. That means that whatever you say and do, and people that follow you, you bear their guilt. Their blood is on your hands.
Yes.
Because the iniquity of the temple will go on the priest.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says. God doesn't lie. Okay, let's continue. This says verse 6. Can you read it for me? This altitude is killing me.
17:6.
You know, I was training this morning in Phoenix, only 1,000 something feet above where I live in Orlando, and I was dying after the 10 minutes, and now I come up here trying to catch my breath. Go ahead.
All right. Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and all their princes gave him rods, for each prince one, according to their father's house, a total of 12 rods. Aaron's rod was among their rods.
Keep going.
Moses laid up the rods before Yahweh in the tent of the testimony. On the next day, Moses went into the tent of the testimony, and behold, Aaron's rod for the house of Levi had sprouted, budded, produced blossoms, and bore ripe almonds. Moses brought out all the rods from before Yahweh to all the children of Israel. They looked, and each man took his rod. Yahweh said to Moses, "Put back the rod of Aaron before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the children of rebellion."
Whoa, wait a minute. Now he is saying those who turn against Moses and Aaron are rebellious against me. I don't think people are really studying the Torah. Because when I really understood this in its legal context, it scared the living daylights out of me. It really did. I better be on point when I teach on something as a teacher. Because if I'm not on point and you go the wrong way, I'm guilty. And when I understood that, that's why I spent more time studying than I do teaching. Because I got to make sure that if I present something to you, I got to make a disclaimer. Hey, I'm willing to change if I'm wrong. But many people don't do that. Many people want to say, no, this is the way I do it. This is the way it's got to be. If you don't like it, get out. That's if we are Moses and Aaron. And even when Moses was confronted with a question, this is the person who saw the Creator face to face, as about panim panim. He will go up to the Lord and ask him, hey, excuse me, sir, how do you want me to do this? So let me get this straight. Moses, who encountered the divine, who spent time with the Creator, 80 days, when he didn't know something, he went to him to make sure, but now we just came yesterday to the Hebraic understanding, now we know everything. So I'm understanding my place. I'm just a servant trying to learn, and I'm only going to share what I know. If I don't know something, I tell you. Because I fear the Lord. I truly revere Him. And I want the kingdom to just love and revere His holy things. That's it. You know, if I seem to be very strong sometimes, it's because I see the direction we're going, and I know the consequence and I know the results. And sometimes, this country is an example of our lack of leadership. We, the believer, we're not doing what we're supposed to. The believer wants to escape out of trouble instead of standing in the front line in the time of trouble. If those soldiers would have ran away when they hit the beach, we wouldn't have the freedoms we have. We'd all be speaking German. Right? And we're grateful for their dedication to the point of death so we can be here. Many people don't appreciate that. How much more our Messiah, who came so that you and I can have eternal life, so that you and I will be able to approach God in His holy things. In our, like you said, you knew about something was wrong, but it took you a while to get it, right?
Yeah.
Now think about this, my brother. He waited for you.
Yeah.
He waited for you to see it,
There's so many things.
right? But He waited for you.
Yeah.
Why would the Creator wait for you? And I mean, it would be easier for Him to just get rid of all of us and start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
It will be. But you know why He doesn't? Because my King, He keeps His word. My King, He keeps His covenant. And He's faithful and He is true. And I believe Him. That's why I want to defend His holiness. Whatever people say about me, I don't care. But please respect my King's holy things. All right. Okay, so can you read verse 10, please?
Yahweh said to Moses, "Put back the rod of Aaron before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the children of rebellion, that you may make an end of their murmurings against me, that they not die."
Keep going.
Moses did so, as Yahweh commanded him, so he did. The children of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, "Behold, we perish. We are undone. We are all undone. Everyone who keeps approaching Yahweh's tabernacle dies. Will we all perish?"
Okay, so the children of Israel telling that Moses, we got a problem. We don't know how to approach God. I mean, Korah tried it, he died. You know what was Korah's job? Have you ever studied that out? It's kind of cool. his family used to carry the ark. Think about this. His family used to carry the holy ark. But you know what I love about the Lord? Like, even though he committed sin against God and he paid with his life, his children were still loyal. The sons of Korah were still loyal. But if you read in 1 Chronicles, it tells you that they were demoted. They were not eliminated as a family to work before the Lord because God gave that gift to the sons of Aaron forever. Right? To the Levites forever, their job. But what they did, they lost the privilege to carry the ark and they became guards in the temple. Because it's a gift. And the gifts of God are irrevocable. So they didn't lose their priesthood. They just didn't have the same level of holiness as they once were. Right? That's something that I've recently been really researching. It's amazing. Ezekiel 43 and 44 talks about that. Okay? Are you having a good time?
Yeah.
Only 2 of you. Okay, so now after chapter 17 of the book of Numbers, then the Lord tells Aaron and his sons. Now Aaron, you and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear the iniquity of the priest. You mess up, you die. You are going to represent all of Israel. If you don't do it the right way, you bear the guilt. If you determine the feast the wrong day, you're guilty. They're going to be following what you said, and you better be on point. Thank God for that mercy. Okay? And it says, and you and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity associated with your priesthood. Can you read verse 2, please? And 3 and 4.
Bring your brothers also, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, near with you, that they may be joined to you, and minister to you. But you and your sons with you shall be before the tent of the testimony. They shall keep your commands and the duty of the whole tent. Only they shall not come near to the vessels of the sanctuary and to the altar, that they not die, neither they nor you.
You see? So even the Levites who were able to do a job in the temple, there were certain areas they could not go in. If they went in, they died. But they died, and the priest that saw them and didn't say anything. Talk about being your brother's keeper. You see a Levite says, don't do it. But I can do it better than you. Don't do it. I mean, every job and every problem in every congregation that I've seen in 22 years in the Hebrew roots, 99% of the time is when someone wants to encroach on someone else's authority. A leader says, we're going to follow this calendar, people start going crazy. A leader says, we're going to follow this prayers, the people start going nuts. The leader says, we're going to do the study this way, they want to do it their own way. It's always encroaching on the leadership and the authority put upon them. Okay? We have to stop that. So in verse 4.
They shall be joined to you and keep the responsibility of the tent of meeting. For all the service of the tent, a stranger shall not come near to you.
So a stranger shall not come near to you? So that we can all enter the Holy of Holies? People hate it when I say this.
Yeah.
Well, that song by Paul Wilbur, Enter the Holy of Holies. It's a beautiful melody. I love the song. But theologically it's wrong. Because no one can go into the Holy of Holies except the high priest once a year. Now, on Yom Kippur, when the high priest will go in, he goes on behalf of the whole kingdom.
Yes.
So you can say symbolically, through the high priest, we can enter the holy place metaphorically. But you can't say that you have access to the Holy of Holies yourself. But we don't know the differences. But when you study the Day of Atonement and you study all its requirements, you know that the priest is doing sacrifices for him, his family, the Levites, and the nation. So now he intercedes on behalf of everyone. So when he comes in, he's not only bringing his own offerings, he's also representing all of Israel. It's as if all of humanity goes in with him, but they can't approach. So God picks one man to do the work of Adam. Right? That's why Yeshua is called the last Adam. Make sense?
Makes sense.
All right, so now let's go into the app. Where is a simple one? People talk about the cock crow of the temple, right? Well, in the city of Jerusalem, there were no chickens. So, who's the cock crow? Because in every Christian movie,
Town crier.
is the crier of the temple, which was the Levite who woke them up before sunrise. Hageba, the word is Hageba, which means cock crow. Because it's about function. What does a cock crow do in the morning? I'm from Puerto Rico. They wake me up real early. You're from the Philippines, so you know what I mean. Around 5:30, 6 o'clock,
Yeah.
sometimes a little earlier. So in the temple, they have to get everything ready by the time 9 o'clock in the morning came, by sunrise. Okay, so they have to get up real early. So the guy who would wake everyone up was called the cock crow. He was doing the function that a real animal would do. That's a temple language. Where's the pinnacle of the temple? Because Yeshua was taken there. So I'm going to take you to the Temple Mount, on the Mount of Olives. And can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, this is the south. The left of your screen is south. The right of your screen is north. And I'm standing east of the temple. In this corner right on top, on the southeast corner, is the highest elevation on the Temple Mount. It's not the top of the temple. Because the way the topography, the depth of the Kidron Valley, this is Kidron Valley. There were three main valleys in Jerusalem. There was a Kidron Valley on the east. There was the Hinnom Valley right here on the west, and on the west and south. And you have the Thoropian Valley that goes right alongside this road all the way up to the Damascus Gate right here on the north. Okay? So when you look at the Mount of Olives, that corner right here, Josephus tells us that that was the most deepest place in the ravine was big. The depth of the valley plus the height of the wall of the temple made it the highest point on the Temple Mount. Now today you don't see that because Jerusalem has been conquered 44 times. So therefore you keep building, so you don't really see how deep it was. Okay? So I can tell you, I'll take my tours there all the time. See, when I go right to this corner, this is looking west. Now I'm going to look to that corner. And that corner is the southeastern corner. Yeshua, according to scripture, was taken to this corner by Satan. Okay, it's called the pinnacle of the temple. The topography teaches you what the geography that the Bible talks about is. Amen?
Amen.
Okay, so now, let's talk about when Yeshua turned over the tables. I'm going to take you here real quick. And I want to make it more interactive. So if you have a question, please feel free, okay? I think I did my intro already. But you see that there's a wall, and then inside, on the Temple Mount, there was a wall too. You see this wall? You have the retaining wall. By the way, during the time of the Hasmonean family, or the time of Solomon, this area right here did not exist as part of the temple. It was part of the mountain, but not part of the temple. It was an extension that Herod built. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the same thing is on the west, same thing is on the north. He cannot add on the east because of the Kidron Valley. He cannot add anything on there. He cannot add it. So now we know what Solomon's porch is. Solomon's portico. If you understand the archaeology and the topography, then when it says that Peter was in Solomon's porch, or Stephen I think it was, and Yeshua was teaching in Solomon's portico, now we know exactly what that is. I can take you right to it in a little bit. Now, so you see that wall? Can somebody go to Matthew 24:1, please? Can I sit? Is that okay if I sit?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Matthew 24, verse 1.
Yeshua went out from the temple and was going on his way. His disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple.
Okay, the buildings of the temple. You cannot see those buildings even if I'm in this area on the bottom, because that wall was almost like 33, 36 feet high. So when Yeshua said this, he was actually walking away from those buildings in here. Very important. Now, where is that wall in the Bible? It was King Hezekiah, I think it was, but it's based on Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 42, I think it is. Found it the other day. Want to make sure. 42 verse 15, can you please read it?
Now when he had finished measuring the inner house, he brought me out by the way of the gate which faces towards the east, and measured it all around.
So he measured, go ahead, keep going.
He measured on the east side with the measuring reed 500 reeds.
Okay, so from this corner, let me take you to the big map over here. From this corner where the arrow is, all the way through here. I'm sorry, through here, 500 cubits. You see what I mean? From here, from this corner here, see the wall? Please say yes or no so I know you will.
Yes.
From here, all the way to here, 500 cubits. Keep reading.
Alright. He measured on the east side with the measuring reed 500 reeds, with the measuring reed all around. He measured on the north side 500 reeds.
Okay, there we go. So from this corner in the southeast, all the way to the south, the northeast to the northwest, 500. By the way, I can take you on my tour to the original western wall. See where I'm standing right here, where my cursor is?
Yes.
I have a picture that I took on that wall. All you see is the bedrock. Okay, go ahead.
He measured on the south side 500 reeds with a measuring reed.
There you go, right here, look. From this corner here, all over here, 500. So the 500 by 500 on top of the Temple Mount is established by God. Now, but wait a minute. Where does that come from? It has to, because it's holier area. If you go to the book of Exodus, don't go, already read that. So when you go to the book of Exodus, and I'm going back and forth because I want to show you some elements of the temple that you can prove in the Bible. You follow? In Exodus chapter 19, verse 12, verse 11. If you have it, let me know.
Got it.
Go ahead.
And be ready against the third day, for on the third day Yahweh will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. You shall set bounds to the people all around, saying, be careful that you don't go up onto the mountain or touch its border. Whoever touches the mountain shall be surely put to death.
Okay. So now we know that God said a perimeter, like you put a fence around your house.
Yeah.
My house, I have a fence. Do not trespass. If you show up at 3 in the morning, I can shoot you. Trespassing my sacred space. How much more trespassing God's sacred space? By the way, this is the reason why Paul got arrested. Okay, let me show you where he was. Now, you see this little fence right here? It's easier for us to see it here than you guys over there. I'm so sorry that you can't see it as well. But you can get this app on your app store on your phone for your iPads, your Mac, on your cell phones, and also for Android. And it will be a great tool for you to learn a lot of things. And what I'm trying to do today, I'm going to connect a lot of New Testament stuff to the app so you can see the geography where everything happened. Okay? All right, so let me take you here to the Royal Stoa. This is where their tables will turn. And I'm going to show you this after I finish here, okay? But if I go through that wall, through that fence, through that door used to be all gold. It was about 32 feet high. It's quite big. Now, let me ask you a question. Can you see the temple buildings from there?
No.
So that means that when you look at Matthew 24:1, they have to be inside that wall. They're walking out of the temple, and the only place that you can see it is inside. Look. Yes?
Yes.
Now you see that little fence in front of me right here? It's called the soreg. Now the soreg is a very important fence, because that's just what I read right there. What you just read in Exodus 19. This is the fence that goes all around the temple buildings that no Gentile can trespass. A Gentile can be standing where I'm at here. A Jew, an Israelite, Gentile, men, women, children can be here. But a Gentile cannot go beyond that point. As a matter of fact, that sign right here, I saw the original one at the Jerusalem Museum, and they have another one they have it in the Turkey Museum. Okay, so we know, we have the evidence that the fence for purity, holiness, beyond this, on the other side inside, is sacred space. It's like, for example, if I go, I got invited to your house. You notice that I have not gone anywhere except the bathroom, and I asked your permission to go to the bathroom. Where is your bathroom? Why? Because I don't know your house. I don't know your floor plan. So if I start wandering around, you're going to feel disrespected because it's not my house. It's just logical, right? I may go into your sacred space, your bedroom. I have no business being there. So I asked you, can I go to the bathroom? And you took me directly to it. Now, as a good guest, I need to go directly then come back. I'm not free to roam your house unless you give me a tour. And even after the tour, I don't have permission to go in certain places. If I'm your guest in this house, you're going to assign me a room with a bathroom. That becomes my sacred space. If you're going to need something from that room, normal hosts, they knock on the door. Can I come into your room? It's not my room, it's your house. Yeah, but you allotted it for me. So the door now becomes sacred space. You see, if I go into your marriage bed and I lay down in your bed, that is the ultimate type of disrespect to you. How much more the Holy of Holies, which is the most holy place of God? Can anybody just walk in your door? Anybody you don't even know who comes from the outside? You don't even know. Your neighbors? Can they come into your house unannounced without telling you or knocking on the door first? Can they? I mean, no. They will knock and ask your permission. Because this area is where you and your family dwell. It's sacred space to you. Trespass means that you have the right to defend. You don't know my intention. So how much more God's holy things? Now you understand why I'm so adamant about the holy things? Because it belongs to the realm of holiness. Have you done a research on the word kedusha, holiness in the Bible? It'll change your life like it did mine. My teacher, I had an argument with him about the name. Okay? Not an argument. I was just trying to state my case. And you know, he is such a good, humble man, Joseph Good, that he heard me. He heard what I was saying. And he didn't say anything. He just said, hey, I got homework for you. He gave me an article based on scripture. And because of respect for my teacher, I read it and I studied. Half through the article, I repented. Because I was making an argument about something that I'm pronouncing the name, but my behavior is profaning his name that I'm pronouncing. It's like a child, right? Everyone knows it's your kid. Right? But if you go somewhere that he's not around, people get to know you, they know who your son is. Oh man, you should be very proud. He's a good gentleman. He's a good thing. You feel like, wow. He honors your name by his behavior. Right? So what if he pronounced your name? I'm the son of this guy. But then his behavior is unethical, no integrity, no character, completely opposite of you. Now when you go over there and they see him, they think you're the same way. Mm-hmm. Because we're not revealing the character of God through our behavior. We feel that we are sanctifying him by only the pronunciation, but then we're doing our own feast and we're changing everything holy. So there's a oxymoron. Because if we study the holy things, then we'll be very careful that what we do reflects the character of the holiness of his name. Because if we don't represent him the right way, we by default, we are shaming his name by our behavior. And that's very significant. By the way, the temple is teaching you how to behave in the house of God in the holy things. That's what the temple does. It teaches you set the rules of the perimeters of holiness. How do you deal with them? Well, the Lord teaches you. You want to pray to me? This is the way you do it. You want to bring an offering? This is how you do it. By the way, you cannot bring me an offering if you're fighting with your neighbor. Make it right. Because you're in covenant with me. If you oppress him, it's up if you oppress me. Because he is not an oppressor. So if I do something against you, don't dare go against to God for favor wait a minute, we both represent him. Because if you don't know, we serve the God of Israel. And then you see our behavior unbecoming of the servants of God. What will you say about my God? You see what I mean? The temple teaches you that behavior is extremely important so that we may represent him the way he deserves to be represented. With honor, with reverence, with fear, with the behavior that he deserves. So I'm so passionate about the house because it's teaching me how to please him. So I am no longer scared. I revere him, I respect him, but I'm not scared in that sense like I used to be. Because he's giving me the instructions. He tells me, if you follow my instructions, it'll go well with you. I will bless you. So if we don't study the instructions, then we're always in chaos, we're always in fear, and we're always running away. But no weapon formed against you shall prosper if we are in a covenantal relationship. So if I do what he asks, why should I live in fear? I know I live in the real world, there are a lot of things, bad things out there, but if it's my time, it's my time. But I'm not going to live, I refuse to live in fear. Because I serve the God who promised he will keep me safe.
Amen.
And by the way, if God forbid something happens that I die, he promised he will resurrect me. And I believe that. So I will die with the hope of the resurrection and believing 100% that he has defeated death. And that's what the temple teaches you about life. So, Acts 21. Yeah, you guys doing okay? We
Yes.
good?
Yes.
Presenting a few things that you probably never heard before?
Yes.
Okay, good. In Acts 21, verse 20. Can you read for me, please?
They, when they heard it, glorified God. They said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed, and they are all zealous for the law. They have been informed about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs."
And remember, that was the accusation against Paul. They accused him that he was not teaching Torah or keeping the commandments. Remember that. Okay, keep going.
Alright, what then? The assembly must certainly meet, for they will hear that you have come. Therefore, do what we tell you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow.
Okay, stop there. So now, he took a vow. 4 men took a vow. Which vow was that?
Nazarite.
In Nazarite. Wait, these events occurred 28 years after Yeshua died on resurrection. Claudius was the emperor between 41 and 54. Paul was coming out of Corinth, going to Ephesus in Acts 18:18. He took a vow. It says, so Paul still remained a good while. He then took leave of the brethren and sailed for Syria, and Priscilla and Aquila were with him. He had his hair cut off at Cenchrea, which is Corinth, right? For he had taken a vow. So why did he cut his hair? Because he probably became ritually unclean. He had to start his Nazarite over again.
Yes.
It was minimum 30 days. Okay? Very important. Okay, then in chapter 20, verse 16 says this. And Paul had decided to sail past Ephesus so that he would not have spent time in Asia, for he was hurrying to be at Jerusalem, if possible, on the day of Pentecost. Well, wait a minute, I'm confused. Almost 30 years after Yeshua dies and resurrects, Paul is going for the feast? He's going up to Jerusalem? Well, wait a minute, Rico. So he didn't keep Passover? Well, no, he's far away. He kept the Seder. Do you know what they would do when they were in Asia Minor? Or they were not in Israel for Passover? They would do the Seder, but they would not eat a lamb. They would put a shank bone, because the shank bone represented the lamb. And because they know they cannot eat the lamb, they put the representation of the lamb on the plate. But they have the Seder, because we're commanded to follow the story that happened out of Egypt. Are you with me?
Yes.
Now, in this week's Torah portion, you know that it says in Numbers, put your finger there in Acts, on the Numbers. How many verses I've given you already?
Lost count.
Numbers. Chapter 9. I'm sorry, chapter 10. That was the silver trumpets. And then you have Passover. Where is the one for Passover? Silver trumpets. No, I'm sorry, that was the previous chapter, chapter 9. Passover celebrated. Now watch this. Now see if you catch it. See if you catch it. Okay? Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month of the second year after they have come to the land of Egypt. Let the children of Israel keep the Passover at its appointed time. On the 14th day of the month, at twilight, you shall keep it at its appointed time, according to all the rites and ceremonies. All the rites and ceremonies. The Bible doesn't specify, does it? Although a whole bunch of rites and ceremonies. But you cannot do the one on the doorpost with the blood because that's blood manipulation. You can't do that. All right. It says, verse 4. So Moses told the children of Israel that they should keep the Passover. And they kept the Passover on the 14th day, right? According to all that the Lord commanded Moses, that the children of Israel did. Now, there were certain men who were defiled by the dead body of a man, so that they could not keep the Passover on that day. And how come they cannot keep the Passover on that day if they touch something impure like a dead carcass? Because the temple represented life. And if you touch anything with death, Passover is a holy convocation. It's a holy meal. Nothing that touches death can partake of the Passover Seder. That's why you have to be very careful who you invite to Passover Seders. You don't know what lifestyle those people are living. It's called the realm of life and the realm of death. Serious stuff. Okay? Verse 6. Now there were certain men who were defiled by the dead body of a man, so they could not keep the Passover on that day. And they came to Moses, before Moses and Aaron, and those men said to him, we became defiled by the dead body of a man. Why are we kept from presenting the offering to the Lord at his appointed time among the children of Israel? So Moses said to them, stand still, that I may hear what the Lord will command concerning you. It's Moses, he's saying, I don't know. Do you see why if I don't know, I say I don't know? Because Moses, if he didn't know, then why would I want to think I know everything? If Moses didn't know, he saw the Lord. Why would I want to think I know everything? You see what I mean? So I'm learning from my forefathers. And Moses didn't know, really? So why do I pretend that I think that I know more than anybody? I don't want to do that. Okay? It took me a whole bunch of years to realize that. I'm learning. It says, we became defiled by the dead body. I already said that. That I may hear from the Lord and will command concerning you. Verse 9. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, if any one of you or your posterity is unclean because of a dead body, or is far away on a journey, and you cannot keep the Passover, you can do the second Passover. You see why maybe Paul was hurrying to get to Jerusalem? Maybe he was trying to keep the second Passover because he was in Corinth. That's why in the time of the first temple, the time of the second temple period, because there were so many Israelites scattered all over the world, the Jews, the Sanhedrin Council said, well, we have a problem. How are we going to have everybody? Not everybody's going to be able to come to Jerusalem. So they set up a radius around from Jerusalem. I can't remember exactly how many miles, but anyone within the radius of that area has to come to Jerusalem. In other words, you're close enough to get there, no excuse. You follow?
Yes.
They're saying, if you're beyond this area, we understand if you can't make it, you may not have the funds. Because Josephus tells us that when they were coming from Babylon, it was a caravan of 5,000 to 10,000 people. And by the way, you just don't show up for Passover and leave after unleavened bread. It takes you almost a month to get there. So if you stay for Passover, you didn't leave until after Pentecost. You want to make sure that you hang out. Because it's a long way back by yourself. You see, Josephus gives us all this information. I know I'm getting more technical than maybe some people want to expect or whatever, but I think these pieces of information allows us to get a broader perspective of how much we really don't know still.
Yeah.
And that's really the whole bottom line. It's like, if I tell you about the Sabbath, please, really, if after 2 years, after 6 months, if I have to come back and tell you that you need to keep the Sabbath, then I'm talking to the wrong crowd.
That's right.
Just like the two houses.
Yeah.
If after 6 months I have to keep telling you about the house of Israel and the house of Judah, then you're not really studying. I mean, that can be learned right away.
Yeah.
You know? Not downing that topic. I believe in the restoration of the kingdom. I'm just saying that there's more in the Bible than just those topics. Once you know them, Baruch Hashem. Let's move on. What's the next topic again? Covenants. And then honor and shame. And then this. There's more to learn without losing that foundation. Okay? But all people talk about is certain topics, and those are they talk about. That's all they talk about. There was one guy that I knew that every time I saw him for years, it's the same thing he talked to me about. I will see him come, and I knew exactly which verse he's going to quote. It didn't matter what teaching I did. He would talk to me about the same topic. And it's like, dude, turn the page. Is there anything else you know? You know, and it's like, I already heard it for the last 6 years. Show me something different. I want to learn too, you know? But because I did not agree with him, he wanted to push a square into a round instead of saying, let's look at the whole evidence. And the worst thing was that they didn't want to listen to any reason. All right, let's go back to Acts chapter 20, verse 16, right? So let me ask you this. Paul went out to celebrate Pentecost, correct? And he took a Nazarite vow, correct? Yes?
Yes.
Come on, help me out, guys.
Yes.
I drove an hour and a half to get here. You better get this. I'm just playing. So, were there sacrifices on the day of Pentecost?
Yeah. Yes.
So, wait a minute. They need to bring sacrifice in the temple. They were doing sacrifices. 28 years after Yeshua died and resurrected. That'll ruin someone's theology real quick. Because then you have to ask the question, then what did Yeshua do? I thought he did away with those sacrifices.
Yeah.
If you want to know, I'm going to be in Mesa tomorrow. I'm going to teach about that. Okay, it's going to be this. I'm going to teach you about what is remission. The book of Hebrews, chapter 9, verse 22. Okay, so maybe some of you may go. Okay. All right, so in Numbers 28, verse 26, I'm going to read it. You don't have to go there. Also on the day of the first fruit, when you bring the new grain offering to the Lord for the Feast of Weeks. Feast of Weeks is another name for Pentecost. You shall have a holy convocation. And then it tells you all the animals in verse 27. Burnt offering, sweet aroma, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year. Now that's going on when Paul is going to the temple. But then, by the way, real sidebar, you know where it says right there, the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of Weeks, right? And the new first fruits. If you read the story of Ruth, then you know what time of the year that occurred. The events in the book of Ruth happened between Passover and Pentecost. That's why the whole Jewish world reads the book of Ruth on the day of Pentecost. Beautiful story. But if you know the language of the feast in the agriculture context, then you'll know exactly what time of the year the events between Boaz and Ruth occurred. When he redeemed her. It's kind of cool. At least for me. Don't all agree at once. It's okay. All right, so let's go back to chapter 21. I'm trying to set the foundation for that little thing you see on the screen. See, many people can say, I have one teacher that says that fence right here was invented by the rabbis. It's crazy. When he said that, I'm going like, really? Maccabees talks about that fence being there. That's a perimeter that got established in Exodus 19. Why does everything have to come from Babylon? But by the way, you know that people say that Tishri 1, that came the new year, the Jewish celebration, you know, Rosh Hashanah, head of the year, that comes from Babylon. Do you know that the beginning of years for the Babylonian people was actually the month of Nisan, day 5? Nisan 5 was the worship of Marduk and the new year for the Babylonians. Are we going to get rid of Nisan too because the Babylonians did it that year? You see what I mean? I mean, when do you count the Shemitah, the rest of the land? For 1 month. The 7-year rest. When are you supposed to proclaim the 7-year rest of the land? What time of the month? Tishri. About the Jubilee. Tishri. Right?
Yes.
So therefore, we have 2 New Years in the Bible. The new civil calendar that counts the Jubilees. And then the religious calendar that is based on the agricultural cycle that starts in the spring. Because of the agricultural cycle.
Amen.
Did you know that what happened, did you know that the Ark of Noah landed in Ararat? You know what day in history?
17th.
17th of the 7th month, right?
Yes.
Which day is that? What happened in history?
17th day, the 1st or 7th? 7th.
Of the 7th month.
Now, yeah.
So what happened in history?
Isn't
Do you
that
know?
the temple? No.
Yeshua resurrected on that day.
Oh, yes. That's why I got confused.
The Ark of Noah rested on Mount Ararat the same day in history that Yeshua will resurrect. That's why Yeshua says, as in the days of Noah, divine judgment. Well, Rico says 7th month. I thought Nisan is the first month. Yes, it's the first month of the agricultural cycle. Don't we have a fiscal year here? Don't we have a calendar for school year? Don't we have the taxes? Right? Alongside the regular Gregorian calendar. Do they all have a purpose? Do they conflict with each other? So why in the Bible do we have to have one or the other? When in fact both have a purpose and a function. Because we don't study the temple. If you study the temple, you see how they work perfectly. There were actually 4 New Years in the Bible. Trees. The New Year were trees. Why? Because in the Torah we are commanded that you can now, when you put a tree in the land, you cannot get the fruit until the 3rd year. So how would you know how many years a tree has? You mark it. 1 year, 2 years, or the 3rd year, there you go. So you need a beginning of years for trees. Anything planted during this time, that's a 1 year. You see what I mean?
Yes.
There was a beginning of years for the reckoning of kings. So a king can be enthroned in December, but in Nisan, that's a year. Okay, and then you have the New Year's for tithe. Why? Because they're animals like the red heifer of the 3rd year. If you read any of the animals, a lamb of the 1st year, a ram of the 1st year, whatever. How do you know? You need to know what year. Did you know that when the animal is born, on the 8th day, it's already a year old? Because they're counting the time in the womb. So after 8 days, that's 1 year.
Answers a lot of questions.
Right?
Yes.
That's what I mean. So if we understand the temple, all these calendars, we would understand its function. And there's no contradiction. They have purpose. And when I learn all this stuff, I have to repent every year, man.
Yeah.
That's why I stopped teaching stuff I didn't know. I pulled off the market like 2 or 3 teachings. Because at the time, I thought like 17 years ago or 16 years ago, I thought I was right. And then when I began to do more studies, because what people don't realize is many times I do this teaching, but I go back and I keep validating it. I go back and make sure that I did the right thing. And there are times when I may miss a 1 or 2 points, and I come back and fix it. Because I just want to be, I want to be credible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all. I just want to be credible. If I'm wrong, I'll tell you. You know what? I was wrong, guys. Let me fix it. And I've gone on the internet. Guys, I did this thing, I was wrong. Let me show you what the information is. And then I give you the resources so you can validate yourself. It's time for us to be accountable again. And it starts with leaders. If I'm supposed to be a leader, I need to be accountable. I need to be taught. Many people, they don't want to hear it. They leave. That's just the nature. But I can't worry about the ones who want to hear it. So in Luke, in the book of Acts, how much more time I have? It's 8:30. Until 9?
Yes.
Is that okay? All right. So in the book of Acts, we keep reading, right? And it says, he taken a vow. It's a Nazarite vow. How many sacrifices do you have to bring for a Nazarite vow? Okay, let's go to Numbers chapter 6. Numbers chapter 6. Remember, he had 4 men plus himself, that's 5 people. And you go to Numbers chapter 6, if you started on verse 13, can you?
Number 6:13.
Yes, sir.
Alright. This is the law of the Nazarite when the days of his separation are fulfilled. He shall be brought to the door of the tent of meeting, and he shall offer his offering to Yahweh, 1 male lamb a year old without defect for a burnt offering, and 1 ewe lamb a year old without defect for a sin offering.
Now the word sin is chata'at, and the word sin can also mean purification. It's not like he did anything wrong. Okay, he announced the end of the vow, so now he wants to make what's called the Right of Incorporation. It's called a Right of Incorporation is when he goes from the level of holiness, like a Nazarite, into the common. Okay, so the shaving of the hair was the rite of passage. Okay, you're going from most holy to God. You cannot touch a whole bunch of stuff. Now you're going to go back to the common people. Okay, and now you got to go through this procedure in order for you to be purified to go into that common. So right now I'm standing in the common area there in the screen. Everyone can be here. Just like in this house, if you're invited, everyone can be here. For there are certain areas, thresholds that I cannot cross. Okay? Alright, so I'm in one of them right now. Pay attention because it's going to come up. Paul now takes 3 animals plus times 5 is 15 animals he had to pay himself. Plus the unleavened bread he has to bring. After I show you where he was arrested, then I'm going to tell you how the procedure was done in the temple. Okay? Alright. So, when you read in verse 24 of Acts 21, it says, take them and purify with them and pay their expenses, so that they may shave their heads, and that they may all know that those things which were informed concerning you are nothing, but that you yourself walk orderly and keep the law. We've read that verse many times. So Paul was keeping the law 28 years after Yeshua died and resurrected. Verse 25 is important, because every good Baptist I've ever met, and their good intentions, they tell me, well, Rico, it says, but concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided that they should not observe no such thing. Which is true. Why is that? Do me a favor. Can you go back? Can you go to Numbers chapter 6, my brother? What's it? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mike, right?
Yes.
Numbers 6, verse 1.
Sure.
I want you to pay attention to whom the commandment is addressed to.
And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying,
Keep going.
speak unto the children of Israel, and say to them, when either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto Yahweh.
Okay, a man and a woman of Israel,
Yes.
not Gentiles.
Yes.
Right?
Right?
So the Gentiles, according to the law, cannot do this. Why? Anybody? Why?
Commonwealth of Israel.
Yes. For salvation. Absolutely. But remember, salvation is one thing. Anyone who believes in Messiah, you get the gift of salvation. You belong now with equal rights for the inheritance and descendants, according to Genesis 15. Yes. That doesn't mean that you can go into the temple uncircumcised. Sacred ground. You have to have the sign of the covenant. So ask me, Rico, how can you prove that? I'm glad you asked. Let's go to Ezekiel 44. Ezekiel 44, verse 6, all the way to verse 10, says this. Now say to the rebellious, to the house of Israel, thus says the Lord Elohim, O house of Israel, let us have no more of your abominations. When you brought foreigners, uncircumcised in the heart and uncircumcised in flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to defile them. Remember that in Exodus 19, we already established that a stranger cannot approach the sacred area. In the temple, they put a sacred area around the buildings. It's holy ground. Remember when Moses went in the holy ground in the burning bush, and the Lord says, remove your sandals, for where you're standing is holy ground. Right? All right, it's holy ground. Okay, and it says to the Father, my house, when you offer my food and the fat and the blood, and they broke my covenant because of your abominations, and you have not kept the charge of my holy things, but you have set others to keep charge of my sanctuary for you. Thus says the Lord Elohim. This is for the millennium. Okay? It says, thus says the Lord Elohim. No foreigner uncircumcised in heart or uncircumcised in flesh shall enter my sanctuary, including any foreigner who is among the children of Israel. They don't have the circumcision, they can't go in. Now, they're saved, because that's a gift of God. But to go into the sacred space, go into God's sacred space, there are requirements of holiness that you need to abide by. Are you with me? I carry conceal everywhere. But when I go to a post office, I can't do it. It's the law for me not to go into that sacred space with my weapon. I can complain all I want. But if I don't want to get arrested, I can't go into a building like that. Or federal courthouses. So we respect men's laws more than God's. Okay? So, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so these guys in Acts 21, Jacob is right. James is correct. He says, in regards to the Gentiles, they can't do no such thing. Because they need to cross this place. If they cross here without circumcised heart and flesh, they die according to the Torah. Okay, so now the story takes place. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so go to verse 26, please.
Then Paul took the men, and the next day purified himself and went with them into the temple, declaring the fulfillment of the days of purification until the offering was offered for every one of them.
Until the offering was offered for one of them. So he's bringing sacrifices, doing a Nazarite vow, 28 years after Yeshua died and resurrected. Please ask yourself the question, why is the temple still going after Yeshua died and resurrected? And by the way, another thing, Yeshua, 40 days, never once mentioned anything against the temple after his resurrection. There's no evidence of anything that Yeshua said in the 40 days that was against the temple, the priesthood. And that would have been a perfect time to resurrect and say, hey guys, let's storm the temple. He was against the corruption, but he was not speaking against the office.
Yes.
We lost our minds nowadays. We can't separate a righteous act from an unrighteous person. Bad people do good things once in a while. Yes?
Yes.
There's some bad people that sometimes they do something nice. That doesn't mean they're perfect and they're righteous, but they do a righteous act, although they're not righteous themselves, moral behavior. Okay? All right. So, keep on, brother. Verse 27.
When the 7 days were almost completed, the Jews from Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the multitude and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who teaches all men everywhere against the people and the law."
Against the people, the law, and
this place.
the temple, Hamakom. That's the accusation against Paul, that he was teaching everyone against Israel, against the Torah, and against the temple. Wait a minute. If you follow the story, he got arrested. For 2 years he was arrested, correct? And at the end they let him go because there was no evidence against him that was actually valid. So wait a minute. So how come people keep saying that Paul said the law was done away with? When he went through a court case, he went through he went to Rome. Yes?
Yes.
He was vindicated of the false accusation. So that means that I can take anyone who says Paul was teaching against the Torah, and actually, if I wanted to be this bad, I could actually do a class action suit against any denomination for taking people's money without doing exactly what the Torah says in order to get it. And for slander against Paul. Slandering. And I have the evidence to prove that he kept the law. Can you imagine the chaos? That would be frontline news. Now think about it. If we put it in context, and we have the witnesses, we have the jury, and we're presenting facts, not theology, facts. It will be quite interesting. Prosperity message will be down the drain. All right, I'm almost done. Okay, so now watch this. Keep going. He was preaching against the.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll start from beginning
Yes.
of 28. Crying out, men of Israel, help. This is the man who teaches all men everywhere against the people and the law and this place. Moreover, he also brought Greeks into the temple
You see?
and has defiled this holy place.
And defile the holy place. You see the difference? These guys were believers. But if they are not circumcised, if they're Gentile, they're Greeks, they thought these guys are not, they can't go in there. It's defiling the temple. Remember the whole Antiochus thing? Okay? So, why did Paul, where was the place? Because all this place is a temple. I'm standing in the area where a Gentile can go. A Gentile can come right up to here. But if we don't, how many of you never knew about this fence? Yeah, right? And I already showed you, it's found in Exodus.
Yes.
I learned that.
Right? So watch this. And it tells you it's a sign. There's a sign. The sign says no foreigners can go beyond this point, or you die. They accused Paul that he did this, that he brought Trophimus. That's all they accused him. That he went from that side to this side. Now this side is is holier than the other side. That's what they accused him of doing. Crossing that threshold that represented sacred space. Now a woman can go there, an Israelite, right? And a man and a child.
Yes.
If they're all circumcised, good.
Yes.
And by the way, people ask me all the time, well, how will they know if that person's circumcised? Trust me, in the ancient world, they did not play around with sacred spaces. In the Philippines, you grew up there, right? You know that in the Philippines, the Catholics, they don't play around with certain sacred spaces. There's a lot of myth and a lot of dark magic and stuff that is mixed in with the Catholic Church, and they know about sacred spaces. And their customs from the ancients about don't do certain things. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yes.
You're right.
Correct.
If you do it, curses will come. Sacred spaces. So even a Gentile will be afraid to go through to those sacred spaces. But we don't get that today. We actually do. We never connect it with the Bible. Because, anywhere was reserved with certain rules and regulations that outside your jurisdiction is a sacred space. Okay? All right, so now that I show you this, let me go into the temple and I'll show you a few quick things and then we'll be done. So in Numbers chapter 6, it tells us that when he did the expiration of the vow, he needed to show himself into the big door of the tabernacle, correct? Can you go to Exodus 38, verse 8. Now, you see this area that I have right here?
Mm-hmm.
This area is called the court of the women. All the women, children, Levite, priests, Israelite men can be there, and priests. But beyond the steps, inside that door, no one can go except the men of Israel. Women cannot go beyond that. Okay? Now, in the book of Exodus, chapter 38, verse 8. Can you read that, please?
Yep. He made the basin of brass and its base of brass out of the mirrors of the ministering women who ministered at the door of the tent of meeting.
There you go. Now, in the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, the only door was east. This is the eastern door, representing the equivalent to the eastern gate of the tabernacle. It's a lot bigger because it's a bigger structure, more people. Okay, so in the book of Exodus 38:8 tells us that there were women in the tabernacle where they were ministering right in front of the eastern gate. Yes? So when the temple was built, they made the court of the women based on that verse. Yes? So this is not an invention of the writers. Now, when Paul will come here, now, you see those 15 steps? How many of you know what happened in those 15 steps? The songs of ascent that were sang there. Shir Hama'alot Ezainayin Elohim. Right? It's a big. When I look to the hills, from where my salvation come from? Salvation come from the Lord who created the heavens and the earth. Because that's a holy mountain, and Israel was worshiping in high places and mountains. So the Levites are singing to Israel. When you sing to God, it's not from those mountains where Israel worshiped their gods. It's from this mountain that you receive your salvation. Yes?
Is that where the guys sang as well?
No, they also sang inside. I'm going to show you what that is.
Okay.
But during a certain time of the year, they sing the Hallel Psalms. The Psalms of Ascent there. So they go in one play, one step, 120. Second step, 121. Ascending, teaching Israel how to ascend to the Lord.
Okay.
Now, this is it. Now I'm going to get technical. Okay? If I haven't already. Alright? The measurements are very peculiar. There are different types of cubits. Okay?
Yes.
Now, what I learned is that these steps are a smaller cubit than the steps beyond that door. So the holier you go, the holier area it is, the higher the step. Teaching us that the holier you want to get to God, the higher of a commitment you have to make. There's a spiritual application even to the steps and the levels of holiness. The higher holiness, the greater the step you have to take. That turned me upside down in Israel 3 years ago. It was around 10:30 at night. My teacher has been teaching me all day long. We are in Israel for 12 days doing research, archaeological research. And around 10 o'clock, he decides to start teaching about the cubits and the measurements. And I'm already like, dude, please stop teaching. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Because we were doing archaeological and then sit down for hours with the PowerPoints in the Bible, just like I'm doing with you. And then he started talking about the measurements around 10 o'clock and we're like, oh Lord, I'm tired. But as my teacher, I got to pay attention. Until he began to talk about this. And I got it. I understood. It's like, wait, time out, stop. You mean to tell me that even the measurements in the temple, when you go from one area of holiness to a higher level of holiness, even the measurements go up to show that you go into a higher level of commitment? It requires more of an effort to go up. So just like when you go into the city of Jerusalem, right? The whole city of Jerusalem is holy, but the Temple Mount is holier. The Temple Mount is holy, but the area of the Gentiles is holier. And then go to the court of the women. It's holier than everything else. It's holier than the court of the Gentiles, the Jerusalem. Do you follow?
Yes.
And then when you go into the area of the Israelites, it's holier than the area of the women and the outer courts and all that stuff. So what do you see is the whole world is around Jerusalem. Only Israel goes into the temple. Only the men can go to a certain area. Only the Levites can be in a certain area. Only the priest can be in a certain area, and only one man can go into the Holy of Holies.
Yes.
That means that the closer you want to get to God, you got to go alone. You can't get people with you.
Very interesting.
That's why the Lord took them to the wilderness. They would not serve him in the midst of a metropolis. He needed to take them to the wilderness so they could pay attention to him.
Interesting.
That's what the temple teaches you.
Could you tell me if Exodus, what chapter verse were you referring to? The women, I was
Chapter 38, verse 8.
30.
Okay, so now Paul will come here to this door. He will do the announcement of the vow, and then he will go. He will turn around after he did the offering, and he will go to that door in the. Now you see the little baskets right here. Let me connect it before I go to the door. These are 13 baskets in the court of the women. The Mishnah reveals that there were 13 shofar-shaped chests within the court of the women. The chests were broad at the bottom and narrow at the top, so that one would not be able to remove anything on them. Remember the woman, the widow's mite in the temple? That's where she put the money. So each chest was put there for people to give a donation, like a box like that, tzedakah, and it was directed to a certain function for the temple, because it's based on agriculture. So if you have a bad crop, you need barley. Where are you going to buy it from? If you don't have it available, you got to go buy someplace else. You need the money. You follow? Okay. I'm glad you enjoyed that. You got all excited about it. I got to stop. Right. So Paul would get the hair, not the hair, I'm sorry, after he announced it in the door, he would go to this place, which is in the southeast corner of the court of the women. It's called the chamber of the Nazarites. He will come in here, by the way. I'm not showing you rabbinical stuff. This is what Numbers chapter 6 says. There was a chamber that right underneath that huge cauldron right there, they will put the hair and burn it. And then they will boil the meat. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
So you notice, where's Paul doing all this? In the temple. To do this, he has to go into the temple. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see those lights right there? Kids will go up those steps, those stairs, the ladder, to light the lighting out there. That's crazy seeing a kid. Let me show you something. This is just for fun. Watch this. That's how high they were. Now you look down, and look where you go. Whoop, I dropped. Okay? Alright, so let me go inside the area where the altar was. And I'm done. I just want to give you something extra. Did you enjoy yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Give you a lot of information. Hopefully this was edifying for you. Now, this right here is called the Court of Israel. Can you please read Luke chapter 1, please? Verse 10, I think. It gives you a piece of information. By the way, when John and Peter went into the temple, this is most likely the place they went to pray. This is as far as they can go. Now, you see those 3 steps in front of them?
Mm-hmm.
No
Yes.
Israelite could put their feet there. That was only for the Levites. You see the platform that is higher?
Yes.
The Levites could not go up there. Only the priests. If a Levite would step on that platform, they would die. Because it's most holy. Now, I want you to pay attention to the areas of holiness and how serious it was in the temple. I'm trying to convey to you the whole theme of the night. That the holy things of God, people should not mess with. Because if the temple was standing, and there's somebody trying to do an altar or doing a sacrifice outside Jerusalem, like the children of Israel did when they crossed the river Jordan, and the half tribe of Manasseh and Reuben, they stayed on the other side of the river, and they built an altar, remember? What did the Levites, Pinchas and all the tribes, they said, no, what are you doing? That is a transgression against God. Oh no, we just built it as a memorial. They knew they could not do any sacrifice up there. That was an affront to God. Okay, who has the verse?
Luke 1:10, the whole multitude of the people were praying outside at the hour of incense.
Okay, there it is. So Zechariah is inside beyond that veil, right? And everyone is praying outside. More than likely, the men were here and the women out there. Why are women not allowed in this area? Can anybody tell me? Women were not allowed. And many people think like, well, I don't know, it's just the rabbis don't want no women. No. In the ancient world, there were women prostitutes, temple prostitutes. Strabo, a historian, he says that in Corinth, in the Aqua Corinth, which is a mountain where the temple of Aphrodite was, there were close to 1,000 prostitutes, men and women. In the book, I think Jeremiah or Ezekiel, I cannot remember exactly, but it talks about the temple prostitution going on in the temple. So women were not allowed to be in these areas because in the temples of the ancient world, there were temple prostitutes. So God does not want women in those areas, so no one will say that their God practices fertility rituals. Prostitution. That's why in the book of Numbers it tells you that a hire of a prostitute is not accepted on the altar. I'm glad you came. I'm all excited you came. Now you see that veil right there?
Yes.
How many veils were in the temple in the temple proper in the first century? How many veils in this area?
3.
There were actually 13 in the area. There were 4 in the temple building. So which one rented?
The 13th.
I'd say
Only one of them rented.
The one that could be seen.
The one that can be seen.
Yes.
The one the Holy of Holies cannot be seen. And by the way, in the first century, in the Holy of Holies, the veil dividing, there were two. Dividing the holy from the holy of holies. I want to take you there now. Okay, so, did you know what the name of that veil was, according to Josephus? And also the letter of Aristeas. Why do I read Josephus in this case? Because it's a primary source. He was a priest. He lived in the time of the disciples and Paul, so he qualifies as a primary source. You cannot disregard a primary source in the scholarly world. You'd be out of your mind, because it meant that they saw it. It's like an archaeologist. When an archaeologist finds something they can prove their thesis, then he said, using primary sources to establish his premise. That's why it carries weight. That's the reason why I'm giving you so many verses today. I'm giving you the source. God is a primary source. If you argue with him, you're in trouble. He's the only important source, really. Everything comes through him. Even Messiah comes through him, right? So Messiah cannot do what he wants. It says, behold, before these hung a veil, before the temple, of equal length of Babylonian tapestry, with embroidery of blue and fine linen and scarlet, also purple, wrought with marvelous skill, nor with this mixture of materials without its mystic meaning. Do you know that veil was almost like 7 stories high? And it was this thick. Now it says, nor was this mixture of materials without its mystic meaning. It typified the universe, the heavens. For the scarlet seemed emblematical of fire, the fine linen of earth, the blue of air, the purple of the sea, the comparison of the two cases being suggested by their color. See? So therefore, when the heavens rents, it's an idiom for the veil of the temple. So now, which veil was rented? We need to find out through the visual eye. When you go through the veil, let me turn around so you see what I mean. That's what the altar is. When you go through the veil, then you're going to encounter doors. There were 4 doors, and they're open from the inside. Let me show you how they would open. According to the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who was a priest in the 1st century, wrote it all down. Now let me turn around. I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to go through this door. So between the door was, you see this wall? 6 cubits? There was passageways right between the walls to get to this place. Okay? Now here you have 2 sets of doors. There were 4. So there's a veil outside, and there are 2 doors, and then when you go through the veil, let me turn around again, I gotta get out this way. For some reason it will not let me. When you go through the door, 4 doors, now you're in the holy place. Now remember, you got a big veil, you got 4 doors, and then you're in the holy place. Now, they used to use those doors in the morning. They opened them. But you still have the veil. Okay, now remember, and this is the kicker. The temple is the garden. Did you know that?
Yes.
The temple's what?
Is the garden. Eden.
Yes.
Now remember when Adam was exiled, the Lord did what? East of the garden. Cherubims, protecting the way of the tree of life, the menorah. The menorah is designed as an almond tree. Yes?
Yes.
I believe the menorah represents the tree of life. Why would it be a tree in the holy place? And there was a tree in God's sacred space. Now, in 1 Kings, it tells us that the first temple was decorated in the walls with flower buds, palm trees, and cherubs as the garden. They all know that. We're the ones that never connect the temple and the Garden of Eden. Okay? Now, if you connect the garden in Eden with the temple, then the renting of the veil makes sense. Because we have been promised that through Yeshua, all of humanity will have access again to the garden. Remember?
That's right.
But because of sin, because of death, no one can go beyond the threshold of the temple. Only the priest can be in certain areas. And the whole temple represents life, correct?
Correct.
Only one man can go in the Holy of Holies,
Yes.
which represents the holiest place on earth. And he is in the image of Adam. He will become Adam figure, representing all of humanity. So what if I submit to you that the veil renting when Yeshua died is the message to humanity that through the death of Yeshua and the resurrection of Messiah, all peoples can get back to the garden because
Amen.
God has defeated death,
Amen.
which is the one thing will not allow us to get back into the garden, death, because it's all about life. That's why the temple is so important. You want to know how to return to Eden? You got to understand the temple. It teaches you what is required to return to the garden.
Amen.
So, to finish, let me walk to the corner, showbread, and I'm going to go to this corner here, south corner, southwest corner. I'm going to look north. Let me go here a little bit. And if I look north, you're going to see a space. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's between the veil. The
Wow.
book of Hebrews uses that language. It went between the veil or through the veil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there were two veils, one cubit wide, that the high priest can go through here once a year. So he will go from the south, walk to the north. Whoops, let me make sure I stay on track here. He goes to the north, looks west, and there's the Holy of Holies. There's no Ark of the Covenant because in the first century there was no Ark.
Yes.
So how many veils were there so far in the temple building?
Three.
Ah, where's the fourth one? I'll take you there. In the upper chamber, there was a second story. And the second story chamber was divided in its measurements on top as it did in the bottom. So you have the holy place and the Holy of Holies. So in the second story, they divided it up the same way. So they put another veil in the second story. Because in there, you have the priest that will come in once every 7 years, I think. You see those boxes? They will put a priest inside the box looking to the wall. Like if this is the wall right here, the box, to clean the walls, no one can be in there. So these guys will get in the box, they're let down through a pulley system, they start cleaning the wall without looking into the Holy of Holies.
Mm.
Oh.
So there were 4 veils, and now we know which one rented.
It's not clear. The other veils serve as a ceiling? No?
No, which veil are you talking about? The second
fourth
story?
one, the fourth one.
All it is they divided up the building.
Okay.
The building was 100 cubits high.
Yes.
So a halfway point.
Okay.
They divided up the same divisions. Oh, it's
Okay.
not like it's holier than the bottom,
All right.
but they maintained the same division. They had an area. Let me show you what I mean. See right here, I'm inside now, right? Well, right underneath my feet is the Holy of Holies.
Yes.
Now, when I get right outside the veil, now I am where the holy place would be.
Okay.
So just divided it up. That's all it
All
is.
right.
But there were 4 veils. And the Mishnah tells us this. And the guy who told us is Eliezer ben Yaakov. Eliezer ben Yaakov, he wrote Yoma Midot Tamid in the Mishnah. And he was there in the first century. He wrote what he saw. And he was a priest. Yes, sir.
So what is that depiction of the temple based on?
On this one?
Yeah.
On all the evidence that we found from all the Mishnah in the Bible and also archaeology.
Well, where's the other 10 menorahs?
That was the first temple. The Temple of Solomon. And remember, all the menorahs were lost after the destruction of the first temple. All right, guys, any questions? We covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we did.
At least, I'm glad that you drove 3 hours. I want to make sure that you felt like it was worth your 3 hours drive. Can you imagine come over here and you go like, man, I just at home. Now you're going to be thinking about
I was
the
coming
4 veils.
anyway. You happen to be here, and I'm glad.
And I was sitting so good there for a minute, man. Any questions before
Yeah, I
finish?
got a question.
Sure.
There is some transcendency. I would think. How do you deal with questions like, the transcendency of the things that Yeshua said, Paul said, Peter said, that and I'll be the first to, man, I'm on board with anything in the Old Testament, and I'm there. I mean, 45 years ago, this stuff was boring. I didn't want to know nothing about it. But now I'm all in, both arms, feet,
Yeah.
head, the whole bit.
Me too.
But at the same time, I learned a lot from it. I mean, I love, Leviticus and all of this. But you can't forget the things that Paul and, like I say, Yeshua said that would, like it says, we're all priests now. Okay, we're all priests. Women are priests. And so you have truth is that now, no male or female or Jew or Greek, we're all, we're all one in Messiah.
And we got, wait, let's break it down. One in Messiah in regards to the inheritance.
Mhm.
Galatians chapter 3.
Right.
We're a commonwealth of Israel based on inheritance. Ephesians 1 and 2. That's talking about the inheritance and to be part of the kingdom.
Right.
When you're dealing with sacred space, it requires God's holiness. It's two different things altogether.
All right, well, what did you deal with, Yeshua's words? We worship in spirit and truth and not in this mountain. I mean, how do you deal with verses like that?
Or which one is he talking about? The one in,
Well,
the one in Shechem or the one in
Well,
Jerusalem?
no, the way was that the one lady with the well and,
Yeah, I was talking about Samaritan woman.
Right.
You know what's going on in Samaria? In Chabracha.
I mean, but he said Samaria, he said in Jerusalem,
Yeah.
neither will you worship, but you should worship me in spirit and in truth. So.
Or what, okay, I got a question. Why does that have to eliminate?
I'm not saying it does.
No, I understand. But
Yeah.
I'm just taking what you're quoting and trying to put it in a context. Remember that I read you in Ezekiel that those who are uncircumcised in the heart and uncircumcised in the flesh. Yeshua will never say anything against the office that God himself established on Mount Sinai. But what is the use of doing something if you're not circumcised in the heart?
No, I'm with you.
So the spirit and truth is always then the requirement and the prerequisite for worship no matter what. As a matter of fact, I could prove to 1 Corinthians that Paul is using temple language to teach how to live a moral behavior in Corinth. That's why he told them in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3, he says, Paul, an apostle of Yeshua Messiah, to the ecclesia, to the congregation. He is saying, guys, don't you know that you're a temple of God? All of you? And a guy is sleeping with his father's wife. Another one is worshiping over there. Another one is eating sacrifice to idols. Another one is having sex with this. Don't you know that you're not doing that? He's teaching them moral behavior using the holiness of God's word in his temple. Yeshua is having issues with the corruption of the priesthood. Let me give you an example. Caiaphas is a high priest. But Caiaphas, it was more worried about ritual purity when he was bringing Yeshua to Pilate, and he would not go to the praetorium because he was afraid to be defiled for Passover that night. But he's about to murder an innocent man. Yeshua is saying, you guys are more worried about the external, and your heart is far from me. That's so the same in Mark chapter 7 and Matthew 23. Constantly, the Bible is trying to teach us that one is not exclusive of the other. In other words, you want to have a circumcised heart, then you learn what God's holiness is. Let me ask you a question. If you would have stopped, if there was no more verses of the Bible after Exodus chapter 40, in which it was a tabernacle, and the presence of God came down on the tabernacle, and they tell you that even the priest cannot officiate because of the presence of God, because of the cloud. What if the story would have ended right there? We never had the book of Leviticus. How would you know how to praise God and how to worship God and what is holy to God? Unless you don't have the instructions in chapter in the book of Leviticus. The same thing is true when a believer comes in every church, they get discipled. But they get discipleship according to the denomination they belong to. If you're an Adventist, your discipleship program is based on the theology of the Adventist. Well, guess what? The discipleship program for all those Gentiles was the Torah. But there was behavior that was required of them to improve for them to belong to the congregation. Listen, you will do this, my brother. If someone comes as a visitor for the first time, first of all, it's your house. So you gotta be careful where you have to come. If they come in drunk, and for the first time they want to hear, they listen, and they accept the Messiah, then you don't mind that they were drunk because you're expecting a change of behavior after their confession of faith, correct? But the next Shabbat they come drunk again? And now this time they're walking around your house without permission. You're going to say, yo, dude, no, that's not acceptable here. Let me teach you. You cannot go there or there or there. You sit right there. You can only go to the bathroom over there. And then from that moment on, you're going to be watching him. See if he respects the commands of the proper behavior in your house. He stops drinking. He becomes serious about the Word of God. Now the discipleship, the Torah, because he's saying do not get drunk, he sees that in the Bible, he goes, oh my God, I cannot let alcohol now become my master. I need to master my addiction. Mm-hmm. And he changes. The Torah teaches behavior. It teaches what is acceptable to God, because if we are the temple, we need to learn how to be holy. How do you learn to be holy if you don't have a blueprint? How do children learn? Pictures. Pictures. You get a kid, what letter? A. What is this? Nose. What is this? Mouth. Well, how do you do with the children of Israel? You want to learn about God's presence and holiness? Tabernacle. That's the door. If you go through the back to the south, you're dead. And those guys are the only one who can manipulate the blood. And by the way, you see that building inside the building? Only certain people can go in there. That's discipleship. So Yeshua would never go against what is holy to God. So then we have to ask the question, are we interpreting words of Yeshua and Paul in the wrong context? Or are we really not really understanding the temple? And I submit to you, they're a little bit of both. That's the mistake I was making for a long time.
How do you go on from here? Because after tonight, I wouldn't even want to be a teacher, and I'm hesitant to even, try to do things that, because just from being a short time in it, I don't, a lot of the people that are out there teaching are like, well, you just do the best you can, and you just do, what sort of like what you think you should do without any understanding. But from this, that sounds pretty dangerous.
It is very dangerous. That's why I spent, what people don't realize, I teach in Spanish and in English, and I do a Torah class every week when I'm home. And I do a class on Monday nights for the Mishnah Torah about the temple. Then I do one on Wednesday morning in Spanish for almost 80 people, half of them are pastors from different countries in Latin America. And I'm doing that on the book of Ephesians, chapter for chapter. So I got to study cultural background, Ephesus, their culture, their religion, all the laws there, everything. So that's not temple related. Then I have a class on Wednesday nights to a church. The whole church wants to learn Torah. So I'm teaching a discipleship, following my blueprint. What you see there, that's my methodology of learning. That's what I'm teaching now. Basically, the methodology that I use, you notice how I was connecting everything? Mm-hmm. Is based on my methodology that I developed over 22 years for me. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing, people ask me, how do you connect the dots all the time? That's just the gift I think the Lord has given me, because I have great teachers. So I developed that methodology to establish a blueprint. Everything is connected with everything. So I studied each sphere that you see, each circle, in depth. The first circle on top, covenants, I went back to college to study it. Okay, it took me, I've been studying since 2010, ancient Near East. Then I studied righteousness and justice for like a year. Only that topic. I did a whole course on my website on that topic alone. Then I studied honor and shame in the Bible and the first century. I studied sacred new creation motif. That's the one thing I've been studying the last 2 years. Then I did chaos and order. You got to study ancient Near Eastern customs, ancient Near Eastern cosmology, and connect it with the book of Revelation. Baptism is part of a new creation motif. Anytime there's water and land separating in the Bible, new creation motif. Okay, so that's very important. And then you have sacred spaces, Sabbath, the feast, the temple. Anything that is holy, sacred space. Why? Ultimately, all of that's connected. You can take any story in the Bible, literally any story. I've done it. As many stories in the Bible I can find. And it's going to be connected with covenant. The root of it is covenant. Okay? Because it's a covenantal relationship. Ultimately, it's all about the name of God. Because in the book of Genesis, I was listening to John Walton, a very known scholar, and he said this. He goes, building the Tower of Babel, the tower itself was not anything wrong. They were called ziggurats in the ancient world. Sacred spaces. Every temple in the ancient world was built on mountains. If they didn't have a mountain, they make it like a stepstone structure or a pyramid, like in Egypt. That is a sacred space. But it was done for the underworld gods. The temple is about the God of life. You follow? So that means the temple, everything in the temple, supposed to represent life, not death. That's another teaching in itself. Okay? But the problem with the Tower of Babel, was that they wanted to be able to go up to God to make themselves a great name. To make themselves renowned. And God says, whoa, that's not your function. The function of humanity is to proclaim me. To lift my name by keeping the covenant. By doing righteousness and justice. By bringing honor to me through your behavior. By becoming a new creation so everyone knows that you're in covenant with me. By your lifestyle is always in order. There's no chaos. You preserve my times and seasons, then they'll know that you worship me. When you bring a sacrifice in the spring, you're not giving it to the fertility goddess, you're giving it to me as your creator, as your provider, as your patron. And by doing so, you bring it to my temple because that's my throne. And thus you bring honor to my name. You see what I mean? That's how you honor the name, by your behavior, how you do in a covenantal relationship. Yes?
I have a question. Now, you mentioned this earlier, but you said, what are the leaders doing?
What?
You said something about leaders and what we should be doing and what you don't see them doing. I'm not sure if you meant in the country or in the Hebrew roots movement.
In the country, where are the Christian leaders speaking out about the corruption and about the oppression that's going on? I mean, half of the Hebrews movement, they want to escape to the mountains, get away from everything.
Yeah.
The whole Christian world wants to be raptured out. When we are here to become an example
Amen.
of who God is.
Yes.
You just don't leave the front lines when things get difficult. The world needs to see who the one true Elohim is.
Amen. Amen.
So we all want to run away.
A second question, but this is more technical and controversial, but you said that we're splitting along different calendars, and we should, go from Jerusalem. Could you be more specific? I'm not quite sure what tangential you were referring to.
You caught onto it. I just didn't. I was not being specific on purpose because it takes away from people's focus.
Okay, that's all you need to say.
Right. What happens is that, like I read in Ezekiel 44, 23, and 24, we don't have the legal jurisdiction to change anything. Because the new moon, and all the feasts, and the Sabbath are all related to the altar and sacrifice. So if you are setting up a new calendar for Passover, you require sacrifice. You cannot do that sacrifice. And it needs to be declared official by the priest in the Sanhedrin Council. We don't have that right now. So is there a Sanhedrin Council that is part of the priests over here in the United States? It's not even from here either. So we have people who want to, and their desire to obey the Torah, based on what Exodus says, but they came out of Egypt and then they were told not to do it that way in the land. They don't study time and space. They look at the Bible all as one. It's a command. We are told, remember the telling of the story, teach it to your children. So the rabbis did that. They did the Haggadah, the 15 steps. 15 steps to go up in the temple, 15 steps of the telling of the Passover, based on the commandment. But because they cannot kill the lamb and manipulate the blood, it's a commandment according to Deuteronomy 16. So they put a shank the bone as a representation of the lamb. I mean, I don't understand why that's a problem when the Christians, they all put a little Easter eggs as a representation of a bunny. I don't know the last time a bunny laid eggs, but anyway. But you see what I mean? But we come to this now, we want to change everything. Now, I had a problem with that for years until I began to do biblical law. When I began to study biblical law, I realized that I was changing things that I cannot change, nor do I have the jurisdiction to do so. I spoke with the secretary of the Sanhedrin Council they established in 2003 in Jerusalem. They cannot officiate because there's no temple, there's no altar, there's no high priest. So I had a chance and the honor to meet 5 years ago with the secretary of the Sanhedrin Council. 6 years ago. Okay? We spent an hour and a half. And we talked about the calendar. He goes, we know there are certain discrepancies in our calendar because the calendar that they established in Hillel 2 was based, they were setting up, they were meeting, and the next day they had to leave it, now the Romans were going to kill them. So they said, we need to keep Israel together. They were still doing the reckoning of the days in Jerusalem because the Sanhedrin and the priests were still meeting, although the temple was still not present. But when they knew they needed to be exiled from Israel altogether, all the Jews get out, they say, we need to follow something, and we've been counting it along. See, what people don't realize is, in the temple, they always knew which day will fall because of the sequence of the moon. It never changes. Tops, 30 days. You see the sign of the new moon, either on 28, 29. Can't go beyond the 30.
Yes.
Okay? So therefore, because it's cyclical. So what's interesting is, they will always keep it track. And they say, guys, we need to put a calculated one, and then when Messiah returns, we'll go back to the original one. That is actually written in the Mishnah Torah. The rabbis tell you, when Mashiach returns, they will go back to the original calendar done in the temple and the half shekel. Why can they not do it now? Because there's no altar, there's no high priesthood, and there's no Sanhedrin. That's exactly what the secretary told me. He goes, when the altar is dedicated and the high priest is there, there's going to be a sacrifice that is found in Leviticus chapter 4 and 5, in which 3 elders of the Sanhedrin Council will take a bull and they're going to put their hands on it and confess any wrongdoing that led all of Israel astray. And the Lord will forgive them because God put them in authority to tell the times and season, so they bear the guilt. That's why no Jewish guy is ever arguing about the Sabbath and the feast. You notice that? Go ahead.
I don't know what to say, because there are some people observing the sighted moon, as you know, from Jerusalem, and that changes the days of the feast days and the Sabbaths for the feast days.
Yeah, but what does Ezekiel 44 verse 24 says? Go for it real quick.
Romans 4:24.
No, Ezekiel 44 verse 24. As a matter of fact, isn't the calendar a time of controversy today? Yes?
Yes.
Then how come we don't do what the Torah says in Deuteronomy 17? Any type of controversy, you shall go to the place where I place my name.
But I'm digesting it.
Yes. Okay. Numbers 28 and 29 answers your question. That's the one missing link I have for years. When I finally understood your question is so good question. It's a very good question. When I finally understood that the reason why we cannot do certain things is because we require the sacrifice on the altar to declare it holy. Go to Leviticus chapter 23 real quick to finish this. I gotta drive an hour and a half. Leviticus 23, verse 1 and 2, right? I'm going to show you what the duty of Israel is in regards to the holy things. Are we doing okay with time?
23, 1 and 2.
Yes.
And Yahweh has spoken to Moses, saying, Speak until the children of Israel say to them concerning the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim.
Well, we shall what?
Concerning the feast of Yahweh, the Lord,
You shall?
which you shall proclaim.
Stop. It's proclaiming different than decreeing. Think about it.
Proclaim is when you use mouth, right?
Yeah, but proclaiming is different than decreeing something. A decree is legal, correct?
Yes.
And who has the authority for legal decrees? According to the Torah. You just read it in Ezekiel. To judge in controversies according to my laws. The sons of Aaron. Now read verse 44 of chapter 23.
Chapter 3.
23 verse 44. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you staying for all.
And Moses declared unto the children.
What? Moses what?
Declared.
Why is he declaring and Israel's proclaiming? Have a great night. Appreciate it.
Declaring it to be the law.
I still pray.
Yes.
It's proclaiming that this is
You probably never thought about that before, right?
No, that's-
Joe taught me that. My teacher taught me that. Yeah. There's a difference between decreeing something and proclaiming something. Can you decree anything in the United States?
No.
Can you do what?
Decree.
Free, no?
No, you proclaim your citizenship, your rights. You can't decree because that requires stating a law and changing it. Can the government decree something?
That's what
That's why they have the mask. That's a governmental decree. You have to wear it. Right?
Yes. Well, no, you don't have.
I understand. That's another conversation. I don't wear it anywhere either. I just walk in and I say, no, I'm not wearing that anymore.
Yeah.
I tell them straight up, I'm not wearing that anymore. No, sorry. Except the airfare.
Neither are we here. So.
Yeah, except the airfare. The airfare thing I have to. The flights. Because I want to get here. But I'll put it all the way down. You know. Okay, because it's federal law and I want to get to you.
Amen.
Okay, so. Who decreed, who made an executive order for everyone to wear a mask on the planes?
Federal government.
The president. Right? So it's binding, whether I like it or not. Now in Florida, we live in a free state. So the governor of Florida made it open. So there, I can go anywhere except on a plane because that's federal.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I can't change it. I can object all I want, but it's law.
Mm-hmm.
So Moses decreased because he was the leader of the Sanhedrin Council. Remember last week's Torah portion? Moses needed help. How many men did he select?
70.
And what does the Bible say about them? That he put his spirit on them.
Yes.
So that means that whatever he can decree, they can decree as long as it's a law according to the law.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
But then there could be a Sanhedrin now.
Even though there is one, they don't have executive orders because there's no altar.
Right, exactly.
You need an altar of the high priest. This is the one thing that people don't realize. You need it because every holidays, the Sabbath, the new moon, Passover, unleavened bread, all that requires sacrifices. And according to Numbers 18, it requires them to take care of anything on the altar. As long as there's no altar, and as long as there is no Sanhedrin, who have the judicial authority, then we have to go for what was last decreed by the last Sanhedrin. Because at the threat of death, they have to leave Jerusalem. It's a legal thing. That's why none of the Jews argue. None of the Jews argue. It's crazy. Every year I watch them. Judaism in every branch. You don't. They argue about everything.
You know the same.
They argue about everything.
Right.
You know, but they argue about the opinions of the rabbis. But when it comes to Sabbath, the Mizrahi, the Yemenite, the Ashkenazi, the Sephardim, all of them, they do it. And they do the same rituals. They do the same prayers. No one argues. The feasts come, they all do it because they know the law. Remember? That's why they've been raised studying. We just came yesterday, we don't know. We're still trying to figure it out. So, I want you to do some homework for me.
I'm going to digest it.
Yes, please.
Yes.
And by the way, just verify it. But look between proclaiming and decreeing. It's kind of cool.
Thank you.
Great question. You're actually one of the few people who actually allow me to explain without fighting with me.
Well, no, I'm here to learn, and you're
Me
not
too.
going to learn anything until we hear the other person's viewpoint.
I agree,
And
brother.
have them explain it.
Thank
without
you.
interrupting them.
Thank you. You just restore my hope in humanity. And I appreciate that very much. I appreciate that very much. Yes.
Could you please repeat those verses that you had to look up?
Leviticus 23, verse 1, verse 2, and verse 44. Deuteronomy 17. Ezekiel 44, verse 15, 23 and 24. Numbers 18, verse 1 through 19. And look into the latter verses of Exodus.
What's one after Numbers?
Numbers 18, verse 1 through 19.
Yeah, what was after? that?
Exodus 30 on, I can't tell you exactly what it was, but I want you to notice the dedication of the priests. God anointed them to take care of the holy things with oil and put blood on them, on their wave offering, and last week's Torah portion. So all those things is authority, whether we like it or not. It's kind of crazy, but I have a tough time within the Hebrew roots. I don't want to hear it.
You really challenged me.
I know, that's a good thing, right?
Yes, it
Well,
is.
don't believe me, go back and look it up,
Yes.
and then let me know what you find.